Chapter 54. Without a doubt, this smart little girl had already figured out the temper of her parents and knew how to avoid a disaster. Ordinary principles would not work on her at all. Well, a smart student could not be educated using ordinary methods, so Andre quickly changed his method. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a smile that made the little lowly feel uneasy. With a playful look, he reminded her, "You are very smart, but you forgot one thing. That is, as long as Elsa sees me, she will remember this matter. After all, for a woman, being half naked in front of a man is bound to be very shy. So, as the culprit, don't expect to escape punishment." "Ah, isn't that the end for me?" Beverly screamed and squatted down with her hands covering her face. She put on a pitiful look, trying to gain sympathy. "That's right, apprentice. Now, I will give you the first lesson. No matter what happens, you must firmly grasp the initiative. It is best to take the initiative to make a choice, instead of being forced to react to every move. This is the most important point for a mage, because only the one who grasps the initiative can have the upper hand and move freely." Andre did not pay attention to the little lowly's scheme, but took the opportunity to instill his own ideas. He wanted to create an assistant who had the same outlook on life and values as him. So he had to hurry up and finish it before the girl's thinking pattern was fixed, otherwise it would be too late. Just when Beverly's eyes were rolling around, considering whether to go up and apologize, the door of the room on the second floor was suddenly opened. The young mother, who had changed her clothes, slowly walked down the stairs. Although her face was still faintly red, it was much better than before. An awkward atmosphere began to spread in the room. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." The little lowly hid behind the young man and revealed half of her head, carefully apologizing. Elsa helplessly looked at her daughter, gently bit her lower lip, and said, "Well, I forgive you. Come out quickly. Don't cause trouble for Mr. Mage." "Okay, but you have to promise me that you won't spank my butt." Beverly wanted to negotiate the terms first. She did not want to be retaliated. Seeing that the mother and daughter's eyes were getting weirder and weirder, Andre had to stand out and say to the young mother, "Madam, since Beverly has admitted her mistake, let's just forget about it. It's already a little late. I wonder if you could recommend a hotel. I'm a little tired and would like to rest early." "All right, for your sake, I'll let her off this time. Also, you don't have to go to the inn at all. Just stay here." I meant that there is an empty room on the second floor that you can live in." I didn't mean that," Elsa explained with a red face. She didn't know that it was best not to explain such things. Otherwise, the more she explained, the more chaotic it would become. In the end, she could only create a huge misunderstanding. Andre smiled and nodded. "I understand. Thank you very much. Is there a place where I can take a bath? I've been traveling in the wild for a few days. I must smell terrible." "Of course. The bathroom is the second door on the left on the first floor. I'll go and boil some water for you." After saying that, Elsa hurriedly turned around and slipped into the bathroom. After a while, there was a clanking sound, as if something was accidentally knocked over. The little lowly blinked her eyes and asked loudly, "Mom, are you okay?" I'm fine. The water is already boiling. You could take a bath in about half an hour." The young mother stuck her head out and replied. Her eyes were drifting, obviously a little absent-minded. Andre was enjoying this slightly ambiguous atmosphere while taking out the book Magic Enlightenment and handing it to the girl. "Take it. Read this book in 5 days and write down the parts that you don't understand. On the 6th day, I'll take 2 hours to answer your questions. Remember, don't be lazy, don't play tricks. On the road of magic, you have to move forward step by step. Any small mistake can lead to death. This is neither a threat nor a threat. It's just a statement of facts." "Understood. I'll do my best, teacher." Beverly bowed very solemnly and held the thick book tightly in her arms. She had been in the Association of Mages for 2 years. She had heard from the older children that most of the official mages would not take the initiative to teach. The apprentices usually had to observe and figure things out by themselves. Andre was definitely the first one who was willing to teach diligently, so she understood how precious this opportunity was. The bath water was quickly boiled. Andre, who had not taken a hot bath for a long time, could not wait to take off his shirt, revealing his upper body that was full of scars. Although he looked a little thin and weak, he was covered with streamlined muscles. Coupled with his handsome face, Elsa, who had just barged in to deliver towels and clothes, immediately felt her heart beat faster. She quickly put down the things and said nervously, These clothes were left behind by Beverly's father. They're a little shabby. Please don't mind them. It's okay. I'm not a picky person. By the way, thank you, beautiful lady." Andre turned around and smiled at the young mother, then began to unbuckle his belt. "Then I'll go clean up the room for you. If you need anything, just call me." Elsa immediately ran out of the bathroom with a red face. She did not know what was wrong with her. Whenever she saw a young man, she would feel nervous and uneasy. She was a 26-year-old widow, but she acted like an unmarried girl. It was so embarrassing. Looking at the slim back of the young mother, Andre smiled and shook his head. He took off the last piece of clothing and laid down in the huge wooden tub. He enjoyed the hot water that he had not felt for a long time. His whole body relaxed, and he silently thought about how to live the rest of his life. First, he had to make a lot of money, and a lot of money. He had already asked around in the Mage Association. All the spells in Linton City, including arcane spells and divine spells, were priced at 50 gold coins for level 0, 100 for level 1, 200 for level 2, 400 for level 3, 800 for level 4, and so on. The price of an arcane scroll would double with every level. If you want to learn more arcane spells, he would need a lot of money. He had once read a book in the library of Ulysses. It mentioned that in ancient times, the wealth of an archmage was equivalent to 10 years, or even 100 years, of the taxes of a kingdom. Sometimes an experiment would cost tens of thousands of gold coins. Therefore, for a mage, sufficient funds are the most powerful guarantee on the path of arcane magic. Chapter 55. Of course, although mages spent a lot of money, it was easy to make money as well. The first was copying spell scrolls. Apart from a small fee, the association would collect as much as they could. However, it was said that the success rate of copying spell scrolls was not very high, so very few mages were willing to do it. Secondly, mages could also make money by mixing potions and making simple magic items. For example, a bottle of potion that could produce the effect of a level 1 arcana spell, mage armor, could be sold for at least 200 gold coins in the market. A ring that could shoot a magic missile at a critical moment was also very valuable. Many wealthy adventurers, merchants, and nobles were willing to stock up on a few items in case of emergency. Due to the scarcity of mages, the prices of these items were always high. Sometimes they would even run out of stock, so there was no need to worry about sales. Finally, they would accept other people's employment. Some of them wanted their children to learn magic, while others wanted to protect themselves from supernatural forces. In short, rich people were willing to hire a mage to be their consultant and bodyguard. Furthermore, the mage did not have to stay by their side all the time. They only needed to deal with the situation when something happened. Usually, the mage would just take the money and not do any work. Andre felt that he could do 3 things at the same time. First, he could make potions and items. On one hand, he could earn money. On the other, he could train these 2 abilities. Then, he could make scrolls of the spells he hadn't used that day. After all, with the help of the system, he only had to pay a certain amount of EXP to have a success rate of 100%. As for the employment, it was better to get a general idea of the situation first. According to his idea, the salary could be lower, but it couldn't take up too much of his time. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it. With money, he could buy more scrolls and master more arcane spells. However, the association only allowed ordinary members to reach level 3. If he wanted to reach level 4 or above, he would have to complete a lot of missions and accumulate the so-called contribution points. He could only buy more scrolls after becoming a senior member. This also meant that if Andre wanted to advance further, he would have to work hard for the association. He would also have to settle down in the city and gain a certain amount of power. He might even have to become a member of the nobles and have a fixed property. It had to be said that the Sorcerers' Association's method of binding interest was quite effective. When a sorcerer owned a large property and became a member of the ruling class, they would naturally be closely linked to Linton City. No one would be willing to see their interests being infringed upon, so when an enemy invaded, everyone would work together. A few dozen sorcerers were definitely enough to change the direction of a war. In fact, the participants of the war in Orire were all elites, and there were only a few thousand of them. Even if a kingdom launched a full-scale war, there would only be about 20 to 30,000 of them. There were no civilians among them. They were either powerful professionals or professional soldiers who had been trained for a long time. In this unscientific world, only those primitive monsters in the wild had the ability to raise an army of hundreds of thousands of people. But this was the most classic example of the Cantera Kingdom. 150 feudal knights gathered together, and with a single charge, they completely crushed the 30,000 orc allied army. Then 4,000 knights arrived and chased after them, killing them all. Although it sounded a little exaggerated, it was the cruel truth. After all, you couldn't expect a bunch of undisciplined, unarmed, and undisciplined mobs to defeat humanoid monsters who were armed to the teeth, trained since young, and could easily lift hundreds of kilograms of objects and wield their swords thousands of times without feeling tired. Therefore, the real main force of the Cantera Kingdom was always the enemy's south. Their attitude towards the orcs in the north was similar to how humans looked at cockroaches and rats. It was only disgust and not hatred. The orcs' only chance of victory was to conquer one or two major cities before the kingdom arrived and equip themselves with the armor and weapons in those cities. Then, they would use the terrain to their advantage to neutralize the feudal knights' charge. They would be able to fully utilize their physical strength and expertise in melee battles to their fullest potential. But it was a pity that according to Andre's observations, there was nothing else in their heads other than violence, not to mention complex battle tactics. If not, they wouldn't have been beaten up for centuries without any improvement. Imagine, in a battle of thousands of people, if a group of mages suddenly appeared, aimed at the densest part of the enemy formation, and raised their hands to cast a spider web spell, trapping all the enemy warriors in place and unable to move. What would the result be? After all, this rank 2 arcane spell had a radius of 10 meters with the target as the center. 10 people casting it at the same time could change the situation of the entire battlefield. This was the reason why mages existed. They could help their side defeat powerful opponents and control the direction of the battle. The prosperity and strength of Linton City was tied together with a large number of mages, allowing everyone to enjoy benefits that other places couldn't provide. Andre sighed softly when he recalled the conflict that had occurred in the association during the day, as well as Gavin Lawrence's ferocious expression. He muttered to himself, "Sigh, it seems like I'll have to stay here for a while. At the very least, I'll have to learn all the arcane spells in the association and figure out why these people are fighting." He was very clear that the intelligent mages definitely wouldn't be divided into two factions because of some personal grudge. There must be a huge benefit involved, but what benefit could it be that a group of mages with supernatural powers would place so much importance on it? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that there must be some secret hidden within. He had to investigate it thoroughly before considering leaving. After soaking for a full hour, Andre finally washed away the dirt on his body. He put on a slightly large linen robe and walked out after drying his hair. The little lowly was holding a copy of Magic, Enlightenment, and reading it with relish under the oil lamp. At the same time, she was eating the oatmeal in the wooden bowl. Her two white and tender little feet were swinging back and forth. She looked extremely adorable. Elsa, who was sitting to the side, hurriedly stood up and walked over with a wooden bowl when she saw the youth walk out. "Mr. Mage, I heard that you didn't even have time to eat dinner, so I specially made some oatmeal. Please have some." Smelling the faint fragrance of the oatmeal, Andre took the wooden bowl and smiled as he complimented, "Thank you. You are a beautiful and considerate lady. Also, you don't have to call me so formally. Just call me Andre. It'll make us seem closer." Chapter 56. All right, Mr. Andre. I heard from Beverly that you came to Lincoln City today. Elsa asked with a blushing face. She was obviously not used to calling a mage by his name, so she added the word Mr. at the end. Yes, to be exact, I only arrived at noon. After a simple tour, I went to the Sorcerers Association. By the time I came out, it was already dark. I didn't even have time to find a place to stay, Henry replied with a smile as he drank his oatmeal. As a man with normal physiology, no one would refuse to talk to a young and beautiful woman with a charming aura. He treated it as a form of mental relaxation and enjoyment. Hearing the young man's complaint, Elsa smiled and pursed her lips. She used a half-joking tone to tease him. Fortunately, I didn't find a hotel, or else I would have lost the honor of hosting a mage. To be honest, you are very different from other mages. Although you have great power, you like to reason and are very polite. If you don't mind the simplicity, you can always stay here. My culinary skills are passable, and I can help prepare 3 meals a day. Thank you very much. This will save me a lot of effort. As a tenant, this is my rent and food expenses. Please don't reject it. Please accept it. Andre did not reject and immediately agreed. He immediately took out a heavy Turi's gold coin from his backpack and placed it on the table. Although he did not know how this young widow supported herself, but from her patched clothes, she must have been troubled by poverty, so he could not let her stay here for free. Elsa was obviously shocked by the heavy gold coin in her hand and quickly rejected. This is too much. Even if I stay here for a month, it won't cost this much. Take it first. Buy more delicious food, and the rest will be your salary. Quit your job and take care of this house in the future. After saying that, Andre finished the oatmeal in his bowl in one gulp, took the gold coin, and placed it in the young widow's palm. He then went straight up to the second floor and entered his room. The restless night passed quickly. As the sun shone through the window and shone on the curtains, a new day had begun. The soft bed always made people unwilling to get up. Andre did not know how long he slept. He only knew that it was rare for him to completely relax last night. Most importantly, he could finally sleep on a real bed again. Ever since the day he came to this world, he either had to eat and sleep in the wild, where he couldn't even find a flat surface, let alone a bed, or he slept on the hard wooden planks of lonely mountain town, with only a piece of animal skin under his body. As for the days when he was imprisoned by Ulysses, it was even more unbearable. He did not even have a place to stay, and could only sleep on the floor of the warehouse. He even had to be careful when he slept, for fear that he would wake up and find himself tied to a rack with his intestines cut open. However, no matter how comfortable he was, he had to get up because he still had a lot of things to do today. For example, a lot of troublesome tools and materials to buy, so he could only force himself to open his eyes and slowly sit up on the bed. He gently pulled open the curtains and looked out at the bustling city and noisy streets. According to the relatively backward productivity of Orire, Lincoln City, with a population of 100,000 people, was already considered an international metropolis. It also seemed to have mastered the manufacturing process of glass. Even the residents of the slums could have glass windows in their houses, just that there were a lot of impurities and bubbles. But even so, it was still much more developed than the Cantera Kingdom. Not to mention that most of the residents of Lonely Mountain Town had wooden windows. According to the only merchant in the town, Rot, the kingdom did not have the method of manufacturing glass, so they could only buy it from the neighboring countries at a high price. Not to mention the poor mountain people, even the nobles might not be willing to use it. If the Canteru Kingdom was a standard dark medieval style, then Lincoln City was obviously a little more towards the Renaissance style. Whether it was the style of the buildings, the clothing of the people, the prosperity of the trade, or the developed sea transportation, all of them showed a sense of revolution. Looking at the huge wooden sailboats in the port area in the distance, Andre suddenly had the urge to buy a boat and go out to sea. Before he transmigrated, he had always been interested in the great sailing era of the 14th to the 17th century on Earth, especially those beautiful sailboats. For a period of time, he even bought a lot of complicated simulation models and came back to assemble them himself, displaying them in a conspicuous place to slowly admire them. Since he had come to this magical world, and it just so happened that wooden sailboats had just become popular, he felt that no matter what, he had to fulfill his dream of sailing and sail a large boat on the turbulent sea. Of course, it was not easy to realize this dream. He had already asked when he passed by the port area yesterday. Even the cheapest second-hand sailboat cost more than 6,000 gold coins, and its carrying capacity was only between 80 to 120 tons. Judging from its round and fat hull, if it sailed into the deep sea, it would definitely be capsized by the huge waves. Sigh. In the end, I still have to make money first. In this city where gold coins are clanging, it's really hard to move an inch without money. Andre sighed as he took off his linen robe and changed into his underwear. Finally, he put on a flame protection robe on the outside. It was obvious that Elsa had washed and dried these clothes last night and sent them to the room this morning. He did not know what she used to wash the clothes, but they still emitted a faint fragrance. She was a perfect woman who was beautiful, gentle, persevering, hard-working, and clean. Perhaps every man would want to marry such a wife. After changing into clean socks and putting on boots that did not have any smell, Andre felt that he was really a new person. He directly opened the door and walked down the stairs. Before he could say anything, the little lowly immediately stood up from the chair and waved her hand excitedly. "Teacher, come quickly. Mom made fried eggs, grilled sausages, and white bread today. It's delicious." "Really? Then I have to eat more." Andre touched the girl's long blonde hair and pulled out a chair to sit down. Perhaps because she heard her daughter shout, the young mother hurriedly came out of the kitchen with a wooden tray filled with bread, fried eggs, and sausages. She placed the tray in front of the boy, and when she bent down, she inadvertently revealed a large area of snow-white, alluring scenery. Even the little pink bean that looked like a young girl could be seen clearly. Chapter 57. As the body fragrance wafted into his nostrils, Andre instantly felt his entire body heating up. He immediately bit his lips and forced himself to squeeze out a smile. "Thank you, madam. Today's breakfast is really sumptuous. It's what I should do. After all, you paid me a lot of money. I exchanged that gold coin for 5 Alliance gold coins at the market. It's enough for 2 months." Elsa explained while taking small bites of her bread. She looked very ladylike as she ate. Coupled with her quiet and beautiful face, she gave off a sense of intellectual beauty. On the other hand, the little girl's table manners were very different from her mother's. Not only did she eat quickly and hurriedly, but she also grabbed the sausages and stuffed them into her mouth. Her hands were stained with grease, and her mouth was stuffed full. Perhaps it was because of the 2 years she lived in the Association of Sorcerers. After all, although the association was rich, they would not spend too much on these little servants. That's good. Don't be stingy. Buy as many fresh fruits, vegetables, meat, and seafood as you can. Also, buy 2 apprentice robes for Beverly and 2 new dresses for yourself. Of course, you should also buy some shoes. It's not good for your feet to wear wooden shoes with hard soles all the time. Andre glanced at the young widow's bare feet. Elsa instantly felt as if she had been electrocuted. She quivered and hurriedly covered her shoes with her long skirt. Blushing, she nodded and said, "Okay, I'll take Beverly to the tailor shop after dinner. Do you have any requirements for apprentice robes?" "Requirements?" Andre muttered while chewing the food in his mouth. Suddenly, his eyes lit up when he saw the eye-shaped tattoo on his left hand. The color doesn't matter, but the tattoo must be on the chest. Although he had yet to figure out what the so-called system was, at the very least, it had expelled Ulysses' soul at a critical moment. Therefore, he intended to use it as his secret imprint. The little lowly was his apprentice, so she naturally had to wear this imprint. It could protect her to a certain extent. "It's a little strange. What is that? Is it closed eye?" Elsa asked curiously after looking at it. Andre shrugged his shoulders and replied, "That's right, an eye. It's my secret imprint. Among mages, it symbolizes something like a name card or seal. Oh, by the way, I'm a little busy today, so I might not come at noon. You don't have to wait for me." After saying that, he quickly finished the food on the tray picked up the purse with 56 large gold coins, pushed open the door, and disappeared into the bustling street. The clever and eccentric Beverly glanced at the door and then at her mother, who was sitting there in a daze. She suddenly asked loudly, "Mom, what do you think about letting Minter Andre be my father?" As the saying goes, children's words carry no harm. Elsa, who was frozen in place, was instantly awakened. Her face instantly turned red, as if she had a fever. She immediately stood up and reprimanded her daughter loudly. "Don't talk nonsense. I'm almost 30 years old, and I'm still a widow. I'm not worthy of a young and promising mage. Hurry up and eat your breakfast. I'm going to wash the dishes. All right? Why are you being so fierce? I'm just giving a suggestion." The little girl curled her lips and continued to compete with the fried eggs and sausages on the plate. However, her two big eyes kept rolling around, and no one knew what she was thinking. As for the young mother, she quickly took the plate and went into the kitchen as if she had done something wrong. She did not come out for a long time. Half an hour later, Andre went through the slums and came to the high tower of the Association of Mages. Unlike last time, he went straight through the hall and came to the door of the warehouse in the basement. He asked the apprentice who was guarding here, "All the alchemy tools and materials are sold here, right?" "That's right, Mr. Mage. Scales, beakers, flasks, thermometers, alcohol furnaces, and so on. Everything is available here. At the same time, there are also a lot of materials stored here. We can even send someone to deliver them to any place in the city." The young apprentice in his early 20s introduced with a smile. Obviously, this apprentice was different from the servants. He was an apprentice who had really mastered level 0 arcane spells. He also wore a badge made of silver on his chest, which meant that he was an associate member. As long as he could cross the last threshold, he would become an official mage. "Give me a set of materials for making potions, plus 100 glass test tubes, 2 bottles of magic ink, 3 quills, 200 pieces of parchment paper, 1 liter of alchemy potion, 1 kilogram of mint leaves, 500 grams of silver." Andre did not waste any time. He gave the apprentice a long list without hesitation. Since he had stayed in the necromancer's alchemy room for a whole month, he had already memorized all the materials he needed to make the basic potions. Therefore, he could tell what he needed at the moment. There were a lot of things, but they were also very messy. There were common goods that could be bought in the market, and there were also things like bone powder, which normal people would never ask for. The young apprentice frowned and calculated for a long time. Finally, he gave an exact number, 200 gold coins. Although the prices are not high, the quantity and the variety are a bit too much. "Here are 40 tourist gold coins. Please send them to 60 White Dew Street in the slums." Andre paid the money without hesitation. At the moment, there were only a dozen gold coins left in his pocket. No matter what it was, as long as it was related to magic, the price would not be low. Therefore, 200 gold coins was really not a lot. Mages seemed to live in a completely different world from ordinary people. Even their financial system was different. The former could easily spend hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of gold coins for any experiment, while the latter could only earn 30 silver coins after a month of hard work. The difference between a beggar and a billionaire was surprisingly similar to the difference on Earth. After buying all the tools and materials he needed, Andre found a quiet place to draw some blueprints. Then he quickly left the association and went straight to the most famous blacksmith shop in the city. He needed to make a few special gadgets, such as a sleeve arrow, a pulley crossbow, a hollow needle for injection, an alcohol lighter, and of course, a triangular bayonet. Previously, when he was in Lonely Mountain Town, he wanted to invent something. Unfortunately, the blacksmith Warren's skills were not complementary. He could not even make a standard longsword, and the spearhead could only be made hard and sharp. He could not make something like a triangular bayonet, which required superb craftsmanship. Chapter 58. Now that he was in a big city, he naturally had to arm himself. Through a series of battles, Andre found that he lacked sufficient lethality at this stage, so he planned to put in some effort in the area of weapons. Sleeve arrows could be hidden in the arm and could often catch people off guard in close combat. If a little poison was smeared on it, Even a scratch on the skin could be fatal. The purpose of the pulley crossbow was to shoot from a distance. Under the condition of ensuring penetration, it minimized the requirement of strength as much as possible, allowing the bowstring to be pulled faster and easier, thus achieving the goal of increasing the firing rate. As for the triangular bayonet, it was the last insurance and would only be pulled out when the situation was extremely critical. Unless there was a priest present, any creature with blood would die from excessive blood loss if they were hit by it. Ever since he was caught by Ulysses, he had been very insecure. Even if he was in a relatively safe city, he did not dare to relax at all. After all, this world had too many incomprehensible supernatural powers. If he was not careful, he might not even know how he died. Of course, in addition to weapons, there were two other tools. The hollow needle was to reduce the failure rate in the process of refining potions. One had to know that a potion could be ruined because an extra drop of solvent was accidentally added. Most mages basically judged based on experience, so the failure rate was high. The last remaining item, the alcohol lighter, was purely for convenience. Because there were no matches in this backward world, most people mainly used flint, which was not only unsafe but also quite troublesome. With a head full of thoughts, Andre quickly passed through the bustling market, heading toward a two-story brick building that was emitting black smoke. Before he reached the door, he could already hear the clanking of metal from within. Looking over, he saw that the customers entering and exiting the building were all wearing armor. Some of them were even wearing the insignia of nobles that symbolized their status. It was obvious that this blacksmith shop specialized in weapons and armor, not farming tools, kitchen knives, iron pots, and other daily necessities. It was equivalent to an arms company on Earth. At the door, there was even a large number of shining full-body armor, as well as a few strangely shaped two-handed greatswords. These two things were the most testing of craftsmanship and forging skills, so they were specially displayed to let the customers understand the strength of the blacksmith shop. "I hope the blacksmiths here are skilled enough," Andre muttered under his breath as he walked up the stairs into the shop. Ignoring the respectful gazes of the others, he went straight to the blacksmith beside the anvil and asked, "Hello, I would like to order something special." "Can I?" "Something special." The blacksmith stopped his work and looked up. He instantly noticed the gem badge on the boy's chest, and his attitude immediately became attentive. "So it's the esteemed Sir Mage. I'm the best blacksmith here. If you have any requests, feel free to tell me. As long as it's within my capabilities, I won't refuse. Here, this is the blueprint. Everything I want is on it. Take a look and see if there's anything you can't complete." As he spoke, Andre handed over the parchment he had prepared earlier. He stood in place and waited for the other party's reply. He was a little unsure if the clumsy blacksmith in front of him could do fine work, especially small things like needles and arrows. He was afraid that very few people could make them. After staring at the blueprint for 10 minutes, the blacksmith bit his finger and said, The strange-looking dagger and the modified crossbow should be no problem. The spring-fired arrows and the small iron box with a complicated structure are a little difficult, but it should be possible after a few more tries. Only this kind of hollow needle is impossible to make." The truth was not far from what Andre had expected. Although it was a little regretful, it was worth the trip if he could make the other things. Thinking of this, he nodded helplessly. "All right, then I'll remove the needle. How much will it cost to send the other things? How many days will it take to make them?" 35 gold coins. Usually, it would take 5 days to make them. But you're a mage, so naturally you have some privileges. So you can come and pick them up in 3 days. The blacksmith smiled and gave a price. "No problem. Here are 6 big Turi's gold coins." Andre took out half of the gold coins from his money pouch without hesitation. Then he warned with a serious expression, "I hope that you will burn the blueprint immediately after you're done making it and completely forget about it. Don't let me see any similar products in your shop. Please rest assured, Sir Mage. I've served the mages of the association many times. I know the rules very well. I will not reveal a single word." The blacksmith patted his chest and promised loudly. "If that's the case, I'm relieved. Goodbye." After saying that, Andre nodded and turned to leave. Just as he stepped over the threshold, he suddenly saw a member of the association walking towards him. He could not help but be stunned. Gavin Lauren obviously also noticed the young man. He immediately stopped and squeezed out a smile on his gloomy face. "Good afternoon, Mage Andre." "Good afternoon, Mage Gavin." Andre greeted him politely. He could tell from the other's expression that this guy was in a bad mood. He must have encountered some trouble. "What's the matter? Are you also here to order some weapons?" Gavin asked probingly with his two sharp eyes. "Yes, I occasionally like to go on adventures in the wild, so I have to prepare some weapons and tools. The normal goods on the shelves cannot satisfy my needs, so I have to come here to order a few." Because he did not know the other's purpose, Andre answered very carefully and tried his best not to reveal any information. Ever since he saw the internal strife of the Association of Mages yesterday, he decided to stay away from these two groups of people. Before he figured out what was going on, he would definitely not join either side. Gavin heard the faint sense of alienation in the young man's voice. He smiled playfully and said in a meaningful tone, "Ah, it seems that you have misunderstood us. You think that we are aggressive and fierce. But it's okay. After a while, you'll soon realize that sometimes the truth is not what you see. Please remember, in the association, everyone needs allies. But you must be careful when you choose." Andre did not mind the warning in this attempt to win him over. Instead, he bowed politely. "Thank you very much for your advice. I will consider it carefully. If there's nothing else, I will take my leave. Also, I think that mages should focus on learning and research. It is not wise to waste time on other things." Chapter 59. Haha, I completely agree with your point of view, but there are some things that are beyond our control because it involves interests that are enough to make anyone's heart race. Goodbye, it's really nice to chat with such a young and promising mage like you. I hope you have a good appetite for lunch. After saying that, Gavin laughed and walked past Andre, looking as arrogant as ever. Glancing at his back, Andre frowned and began to consider the subtle hints in his words. There was no doubt that the internal strife within the Mage Association was as expected because of huge interests. From the degree of hostility between the two sides, it was definitely not as simple as money and power. What could make dozens of mages attack each other in two rows like crazy? What could make President Boris so helpless? He felt that this matter was like a huge whirlpool involving everyone in Lincoln City, and it could very well involve a large number of nobles. Due to the lack of information, Andre racked his brains for a long time without a single clue. Just as he entered the slums, a skinny child suddenly rushed over, threw down a leather bag, turned around and ran, shouting as he ran, "Sir Mage, Black Lily asked me to pass a message to you. She is very sorry for what happened last night, so she wants to meet you to clear up the misunderstanding." "Who is Black Lily? Are those hooligans her underlings?" Andre asked loudly. The child did not answer, only smiled and waved his hand, quickly disappearing into the narrow and dirty alley. He was obviously very familiar with the terrain. A normal person would not dare to enter such a place. Seeing that he didn't get any useful information, Andre shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He bent down to pick up the leather pouch and opened it. He was shocked to find that it was filled to the brim with silver coins. There were at least 200 of them. Furthermore, there was a note that read, "Honorable Sir Mage, I am very sorry for the bullying of a widow in my territory. Please believe that this was not my intention. In order to show my sincerity, I will first present a gift. If you're interested, you can come to the bar in the back street after sunset. I'll be waiting for you at any time. Sincerely, Black Lily." After reading the note, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He shook his head and muttered to himself, "Interesting. This should be a local gang force. They actually set their sights on me. And from the nickname, it should be a woman. Forget it. I'll go take a look when I'm free. After all, these guys are usually well-informed. Maybe I can get some useful information." At the same time, in a dark alley, the boy who had just delivered the letter was talking to a woman who was wearing tight leather armor and had a curvaceous figure. "Big sis, I'm sorry." "Done. But that was more than 200 silver coins just to see him. Is it worth it?" "Of course it's worth it. You're still young. You don't understand the power of magicians. Besides, he's so young. He's perfect as a partner. Of course, it would be even better if he could be your lover. The woman licked her lips seductively and immediately disappeared into the shadows. Carrying the slightly heavy bag, Andre crossed 3 streets and finally returned to the place where he lived. He knocked hard on the door. He didn't know if it was because he was hungry or because he used too much of his brain power, but he felt like he was sweating all the time. Even the hand holding the silver coins was trembling a little. After only a few seconds, Elsa opened the door. When she saw the boy's pale face, she quickly took the silver coins from the bag and carefully supported him. She asked with concern, "What's wrong with you? Are you sick?" Andre smiled bitterly and shook his head. He explained, "No, I'm fine. I'm just a little weak. Maybe I'm hungry." "Oh, right. Do you know who Black Lily is?" "Black Lily? Of course I know. She controls a quarter of the land in the slums. It's said that she's a very beautiful woman. Many men are fascinated by her. Why did she come to see you?" For some reason, Elsa suddenly became a little nervous. Her 2 beautiful big eyes stared at the boy. Yes, but it wasn't her. It was a boy around 7 or 8 years old. He brought a bag of silver coins and said that he wanted to talk to me. Andre didn't hide anything and directly told her what happened. Only now did he notice that the young widow beside him had changed into a round collar-purple dress and a pair of brown pointed leather shoes with high heels. She looked both dignified and beautiful, especially the cleavage that was slightly exposed in front of her chest, making people unconsciously want to take a glance at it. Elsa didn't notice the direction of the boy's gaze. She opened the bag and looked at the shiny silver coins inside. She was shocked and covered her mouth. "Oh, my God, there are more than 200. Now I'm sure that she has something to ask you for help." "Huh, is 200 silver coins a lot? I spent more than 200 Alliance gold coins this morning. Maybe this woman just wants to apologize. Don't be so nervous." After saying that, Andre walked into the house and sat down on the chair in the living room with the help of the young widow. 200 silver coins was nothing to him even when he was hunting in Lonely Mountain Town, let alone after he became a mage. Moreover, the business in Linton City was so prosperous. At most, it was the living expenses of an ordinary family of 3 for half a year. It was nothing to be surprised about. Looking at the boy's indifferent expression, Elsa sighed softly and explained, "You can't measure it with the values of a mage. This is the slums. Most of the people who live here are poor people with no savings. 200 silver coins is almost equivalent to a guild's income for a few days. That's why the Black Lily put in a lot of money this time." After saying that, she went into the kitchen and brought out a bowl of meat soup and 2 pieces of bread. She put them on the table. "Just eat this. You said that you wouldn't come back for lunch, so I made a little less. This is all that's left." Andre, who had been hungry for a long time, was not picky at all. He stuffed the food into his mouth quickly and hurriedly. As he ate, he asked, "What do these guilds usually do to make money? How can they be so poor? Stealing, collecting protection fees, robbing? Anyway, it's not a serious business. But most of them have no choice. Some can't survive, and some are forced to do it by the ill-disciplined guards. A group of pitiful and hateful people. How much money do you think they can make?" After saying that, Elsa winked playfully like a young girl. Chapter 60. I see. Andre's face showed a look of realization. He finally realized how wrong he was. It turned out that the gangs in Lincoln City were still in a very primitive state. Their purpose was very simple, and that was to struggle to survive. It was a world of difference from the mafias of the 19th century on Earth. Do you understand now? Black Lily must be asking for your help by giving you 200 silver coins, so it's best if you don't go. You know, people like her are always in trouble. Once you get involved, it's hard to get rid of her," Elsa said as she ran her fingers through her long blonde hair. Andre finished the soup in his bowl in one gulp and wiped the grease off his mouth. He had a playful smile on his face. "I have to go after hearing your explanation. I want to see what this Black Lily is up to." Seeing that the young man had made up his mind, the young widow no longer tried to dissuade him. She whispered, "Although you are a powerful mage, you must be careful when you go. Those ruffians often use poison knockout drugs, and other such methods. Also, I've already brought the things you bought to your room. Don't worry, I've been through a lot. Those dirty tricks won't work on me. Thank you, Elsa. You're so gentle and considerate. Andre quickly stood up and kissed her on the cheek. He then ran up the stairs to his room with a smile. Elsa, who was suddenly attacked, was stunned. It took her a while to come to her senses. The skin on her face and neck instantly turned pink. She hurried into the kitchen with the dishes and did not come out for a long time. As for the culprit, he was now fiddling with the tools he bought in the room. After a while, the table was filled with various bottles and instruments. It looked almost like an alchemy room. However, Andre knew that this room could only be used to refine specific formulas. No dangerous experiments were allowed, or else, well, in a real alchemy room, whether it was the floor or the table, it had to be made of solid rock. It could withstand explosions, flames, strong acids, and many other accidents. Moreover, he was now standing on a wooden floor and table. Not to mention dangerous experiments. Even if the alcohol stove was accidentally spilled, it could lead to a disaster. It cannot be helped. He did not want to use the alchemy room of the Sorcerers Association. After all, after what happened yesterday, it would be awkward if they met. It was better to hide at home. After simply categorizing everything, Andre quickly began to concoct the first magic potion of his life. Since he had learned the basics from the necromancer, his movements were very skillful. From igniting the alcohol furnace to adding the alchemical solvent and adding the required materials, the whole process was completed in less than 5 minutes. He stared at the needle of the thermometer and carefully stirred it with a glass rod. At the same time, he observed the color of the potion. When the dark green liquid began to turn yellow and blue, he immediately cast a level 1 Arcane spell, Mage Armor, on the test tube. In an instant, the bottle emitted a dazzling white light, and the boiling solution began to swirl rapidly. A few seconds later, it began to emit a strange blue gas, and a long string of notifications popped up in his vision. Create a level 1 magic potion. Mage Armor Potion. Required ability potion entry level. Pass. Difficulty easy. Forcefully drained 10 EXP. Congratulations, you have successfully concocted your first magic potion. You have been randomly rewarded with a level 2 Arcane scroll. You have received a scroll of Fireblade. In an instant, a parchment scroll appeared in Andre's hand. He did not dare to delay and immediately grabbed a stopper and beeswax, sealing the mouth of the scroll as fast as he could. According to the records of potion entry, all magic potions must be sealed immediately after they were successfully concocted. Otherwise, the shelf life would be affected. Some masters with superb craftsmanship could even preserve the potion for thousands of years and still be drinkable. After carefully placing the potion on the shelf, he immediately spread out the scroll and began to study it. After 2 hours, he finally copied it into his spellbook. Different from the previous Arcane spells, Fireblade was a type of magic that could be added to a melee weapon. It would not cause any damage to the weapon itself, but when it was used, it could burn the enemy. It was quite powerful, and ordinary people could be burned alive as long as they touched it. Of course, to a mage alone, this Arcane spell was more or less useless, but it was completely different when used to buff a teammate. Most importantly, after learning this Arcane spell, Andre could create a sticky substance called blazing fire glue. This stuff was similar to the Fireblade spell. It was usually sealed in a glass bottle, and when it was used, it would immediately burst into flames as soon as it was torn open. It could be smeared on weapons to kill enemies or thrown out like a Molotov cocktail. As a city with a strong navy, Linton City purchased blazing fire glue at a high price all year round. It was used to smear on the arrowheads of giant crossbows and to burn enemy ships. Each bottle cost 350 gold coins, and they would buy as much as they could. After deducting the 5 gold coins or so for the cost of production, he could earn more than 340 gold coins in a short period of time. After all, this stuff could not be extinguished with water. Once hit, one could only wait to be burned alive. The cost of a large warship ranged from 10,000 gold coins to more than 100,000 gold coins. Compared to a few bottles of blazing fire glue, it was ridiculously cheap. As long as one was not a fool, they would be able to calculate the cost clearly. However, the process of making blazing fire glue was quite complicated. It seemed that only 2 or 3 people in the Mage Association had the ability to make it. Andre had only occasionally read about it in the library of Ulysses. After calming himself down, he made a bottle of mage armor potion and 2 bottles of invisibility potion. The latter was a level 2 potion, so it took a little longer to make. It was already evening when he sealed the bottle. Taking advantage of the fact that they had not finished eating, Andre made use of the time to make a ring with silver that could shoot a magic missile once a day. This magic item could automatically recover 100 experience points. There were also 3 other rings with the same craftsmanship that could shoot a stun spell. However, there was a flaw in one of them, which directly caused the enchantment to fail, so it could only be scrapped. After a whole afternoon of tormenting, he finally figured out how the experience points were drawn. After all, after so many experience points were deducted, as long as one was not a fool, one could more or less figure out the trick, let alone a smart transmigrator. Chapter 61. First of all, the items were permanent, which meant that they were permanent. Take the magic missile ring, for example. Although it could only be used once a day, it could be used again after 24 hours. This was one of the signs of permanent effect. Making permanent magic items required the most experience points. 50 experience points at level 0 and 100 at level 1. Every time he leveled up, the experience points would double. Next was making magic potions. Because they were one-time consumables, the experience points were very low. 5 experience points at level 0, 10 experience points at level 1, 20 experience points at level 2. Similarly, every time he leveled up, the experience points would double. As for copying scrolls, he hadn't tried it yet. Because he had to go out at night, he had to save a few spells in case he needed them. 2 bottles of mage armor potion cost me 20 EXP. 2 bottles of invisibility potion cost me 40 EXP. A magic missile ring cost me 100 EXP, and 2 stun magic rings also cost me 100 EXP. Oh, that's right. I still have to include the failed magic ring, which cost me another 50 EXP. That's a total of 310 EXP. It's only been an afternoon, and I've already used up so much EXP. No wonder the Mage Association rarely makes or sells magic items and potions. If I keep leveling up, looking at the remaining 1,960 experience points, Andre suddenly felt that his path to making money had been cut off. Although these items could be sold for a high price, if they delayed the leveling of a mage, it would be a waste of time. After all, personal strength was the foundation of everything. Especially when he was about to reach level 5 and master even more powerful level 3 arcane spells, he definitely couldn't lose the big picture for the small gains. Looking at the mountain of materials in the room, he couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake his head. Sigh, if I had known, I wouldn't have bought so much. It's a complete waste. I'm afraid I won't be able to use it all up in 2 or 3 months. I have to quickly find a way to hunt beasts and monsters in the wild, and try to get more experience points. I'll think about leveling up first. In fact, whether it was making magic items or potions, the mages of Orire all had to pay a portion of the magic stored in their bodies. Once too much magic was used up, not only would it cause their power to stagnate, but it would also cause their strength to regress, which was the so-called drop in level. It was also because of this that magic items and potions were always in a state of severe shortage on the market. Most mages would rather waste their time doing business than wasting their magic for no reason. As the saying went, only scarcity was expensive. Whether it was on Earth or in the magical world, this principle was equally applicable. After burying his dream of getting rich overnight, Andre sighed helplessly. He put the magic missile ring on his right index finger and the stun ring on his left index finger. This was the equipment he had prepared for himself. It could increase his chances of survival in battle. According to the records in the book, there were rules when it came to wearing magic items. For example, Only one ring could be worn on each hand. If there were more than one ring, it would easily cause a conflict. If it was light, the enchantment would fail. If it was heavy, it would cause a violent explosion, directly turning the wearer into a pile of minced meat. Other than that, things like amulets and necklaces followed the same principle. Of course, if he didn't mind being called a sissy by others, he could also wear 2 holes in his ears and wear earrings on his nose. In short, in order to strengthen their own strength, the mages had developed a set of methods to wear as many magic items as possible. It could be said that there was no such thing as the weirdest, only weirder. After putting on the rings, Andre put the 4 bottles of potions into the side of his waist bag. This thing originally belonged to Ulysses. There were leather buckles in the bag that could be used to store potions. Finally, the stun ring was thrown into the bag as well. Just like that, all the work he had done for the whole afternoon was cleaned up. Just when he had just finished cleaning up the alchemy equipment on the table, suddenly there was a knock on the door, followed by the voice of the little lowly Beverly. "Teacher, Mom asked me to come up and inform you that you should come down for dinner." Coming. Reaching out to open the door, Andre saw the girl holding a heavy book at first glance. At the moment, she was wearing a brand new pink apprentice robe, with an eye pattern embroidered on the chest. On her feet, she was wearing a pair of round-headed leather boots, which were also pink. She looked very cute. As the saying goes, clothes make the man, and saddles make the horse. After putting on a new set of clothes, the pretty lowly immediately looked like a little princess. Beverly turned around and asked with a smile, "Teacher, are my new clothes and shoes beautiful?" "Yes, they're absolutely beautiful. Let's go and have dinner together. I had some leftovers at noon." Saying this, Andre smiled and stroked the girl's hair. Closing the door, he walked down the stairs and came to the dining table. The dinner was quite sumptuous. Elsa roasted a whole goose, vegetable soup, mashed potatoes, and large pieces of white bread without bran. This table of food cost at least 1.5 silver coins, especially the pure wheat flour, which was more than 5 times the price of ordinary flour. Ordinary people could never afford it. It must be noted that although every adult male in the city could earn 1 silver coin a day, which sounded like a lot and could be used to eat well, in fact, it was the opposite. This was because the 1 silver coin they earned didn't include the high taxes, the usual expenses for clothes, shoes, house repairs, salt, needles, and thread, etc. If they counted the children and wives they needed to feed, the remaining money would be even less. On average, the amount of money they could spend on food was no more than 4 copper coins a day, which was only enough to buy a few pieces of black bread and potatoes. At most, they could eat fish or meat once a month, which was even worse than the mountain people. At the very least, the mountain people could go to the forest area to hunt at any time. As long as they were skilled, they wouldn't lack meat. The little lowly obviously didn't have the chance to eat expensive food like roasted whole goose before. She held a greasy thigh and tore it with all her strength. Because she was in the period of tooth replacement, the teeth in her mouth were not complete, and it was quite strenuous for her to eat. Looking at the girl's grimacing face, Andre shook his head with a smile and suggested, "I think we should give Beverly a set of knives and forks. Otherwise, if she gets used to eating like this, it will be very troublesome to correct it in the future." "Okay, I'll go to the market tomorrow and buy a few sets of knives and forks. How is it? Are you satisfied with today's dinner?" Elsa asked with a smile as she chewed the food in small bites. "It's very good, but you can have more varieties in the future. It's best to have more than 3 kinds of vegetables. Eating more vegetables can improve the body's immune system and prevent many diseases." Chapter 62. As a transmigrator from the age of information explosion, Andre knew the importance of balanced nutrition. Unlike most people in this world who believed that the more meat and fish they ate, the better, and completely ignored the importance of vegetables and fruits. He did not want to get any strange diseases due to a lack of vitamins in the future, so he paid extra attention to the comprehensive nutrition intake. "No problem. I'll prepare more vegetables starting from tomorrow at noon." Elsa agreed without hesitation when she heard that it could prevent diseases. In this place where medical standards were extremely poor, Even catching a cold was equivalent to brushing shoulders with death. So she was willing to try anything as long as it could prevent diseases, let alone just eating more vegetables. After all, although the priests of the temple could miraculously cure all diseases, including cancer, ordinary people could not afford it. The level 3 divine spell, disease removal, cost 400 gold coins. Even a small noble might not be able to afford it easily. The whole dinner ended with a discussion about the relationship between diet and health. The satisfied little lowly sat on the chair with her belly protruding, humming an unknown nursery rhyme and chatting with her mother. Elsa gently combed her daughter's hair. The scene was full of tenderness. After admiring the intimacy of the beautiful mother and daughter for a while, Andre put on an old cloak and used the hood to cover his face. He quietly opened the door and went out to the street. He planned to follow the address on the note and go to the bar in the back street to see what the woman called Black Lily wanted to do. As the name suggested, the back street was the street in the westernmost part of the slums, close to the city wall. Because it was close to the sewers and the moat, the stench was so strong that the patrolling guards were unwilling to go near it. So over time, it became a place where crime thrived. Many gangs opened taverns or inns in the area as their base. There were also many underground casinos. At night, good people mixed in with bad people, and the security was quite poor. The dark streets, the stinking gutters, the scantily clad prostitutes, the ferocious-looking vagrants, and the dagger-wielding gang members. Andre had seen the darkest side of Linton City along the way. There were even some who had shamelessly copulated by the side of the street, completely ignoring the people around them. Just as he was looking for a bar, a few young men with sticks suddenly stood up and surrounded him. The leader of the group threatened fiercely, "Boy, are you new here? If you know what's good for you, hand over all your valuables. Otherwise, your corpse will be thrown into the moat immediately." If I were you, I wouldn't use such a tone to talk to someone I can't afford to offend, because it could very well lead to death. As he spoke, Andre raised his left index finger, and a dazzling halo instantly appeared on the stun ring. Although he loathed these hooligans and gangsters, he had no intention of killing them for the time being. Magic! Magic! It was magic! Run! Following the shout of a knowledgeable hooligan, all the people around him ran away in the blink of an eye, as if they had seen a ghost. In essence, they were just a group of guys who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Once they encountered someone they couldn't afford to offend, they would basically choose to turn around and run. They had no moral integrity at all. Glancing at the empty street, Andre smiled and shrugged his shoulders. He put his left hand back into his cloak and continued to walk along the road, looking for the bar mentioned on the note. 5 minutes later, he found a wooden sign in an alley. On it was a picture of a blooming lily, and it was painted with black paint. At first glance, it gave off an extremely depraved feeling. Without a doubt, this was the bar he was looking for. Without any hesitation, he walked forward and pushed open the somewhat rotten wooden door, arriving at a rather strange bar. Everyone here was silent, silently drinking the same cheap and inferior ale. There were men and women, old people and children. The oldest was more than 60 years old, and the youngest was less than 7 years old. Every one of them had a calm expression, as if they were waiting for someone. Obviously, as an outsider, Andre immediately attracted everyone's attention. They all looked at the youth with scrutinizing and suspicious eyes, and no one spoke for a long time. The oppressive atmosphere filled every corner, until a series of crisp footsteps came from the stairs leading to the second floor. Duh, 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 duh. Following a series of rhythmic steps, a woman wearing tight black leather armor and black mid-heeled leather boots slowly walked out. She was in her early 20s with short black hair. She was about 1.7 meters tall, and her tight clothes accentuated her straight legs and curvy figure. A pair of large black eyes full of charm revealed a trace of danger, and 2 sexy lips under the high bridge of her nose. For some reason, Andre immediately identified this woman as the Black Lily after observing her. Because her temperament was too conspicuous. Arrogance with temptation, holiness with depravity. Perhaps half angel and half demon was used to describe this kind of person. But what was strange was that after such a beautiful and charming woman appeared, not only did none of the men present show any signs of lust, but they all showed expressions of awe, fear, or solemnity. It was as if this was not a beautiful woman, but a demon that crawled out of the abyss. A few people's hands were even trembling slightly. After glancing at everyone in the room, this woman with a powerful aura walked gracefully to the bar counter, raised her hand, and snapped her fingers. The slightly plump bartender immediately took out a thick book from under the counter, slammed it on the table, and then continued to wipe the table without a word. Soon, the little boy, who looked less than 7 years old, took out a big bag from under the table and dragged it to the front of the bar. He sighed and said, "Big sister, today's harvest wasn't very good. We didn't steal many rich foreigners. Most of the money was copper coins, and they are all here. It's okay. I know you and your men have done your best. Go back and sleep early and continue to work hard tomorrow." The woman smiled and touched the boy's tender shoulder, then hooked her finger without looking back. The fat bartender said nothing, grabbed the bag, and poured all the money in it on the table. Sure enough, it was all dirty copper coins, and there were only a few silver coins. He counted them very seriously, then picked out the silver coins and put them in the box, and threw the rest into the wooden bucket. Finally, he wrote down a string of numbers in the account book. Chapter 63. Seeing this scene, Andre finally understood why these people were behaving so strangely. It turned out that they were paying their taxes to the gang leader. Just like in some gangster movies, Black Lily had the gang leaders in charge of one of the businesses. If there was a problem, they would look for the person in charge, and she would hide behind the scenes to control the situation. It was quite a clever way of doing things. He stood on the spot and watched with interest as the people came up to pay. Some were rewarded, some were comforted, and some were reprimanded. What was surprising was that the people who were reprimanded didn't try to explain it all. Even the muscular men were like obedient children, lowering their heads and letting the woman order them around. Clearly, Black Lily had made everyone in the room obedient. To put it in a more accurate way, their loyalty was above 90, and the possibility of betrayal was very low. Another thing worth noting was the problem of income. Elsa was right. These people were really poor. Their income for an entire day didn't exceed 80 silver coins, and most of it was copper coins. As for gold coins, it didn't even see a shadow. The whole process lasted for half an hour. When the last woman in her 30s finished paying, there were only 4 people left in the bar: the bartender, Black Lily, Andre, and a middle-aged man in his 40s. As the owner of this place, Black Lily crossed her legs and said with a charming smile, "Sorry for making you wait for so long. Now, what do you want to say? Who's first?" "I'll go first." The middle-aged man glanced at the young man and stood up casually. "Boss Gil asked me to ask you if you've thought about that matter. He has already prepared the wedding. As long as you agree, the position of the slum boss will be yours immediately." "Mine? Huh." Black Lily sneered with disdain. "Does Gil think I'm an idiot? He wants to make me his plaything? Dream on. With his looks, he's only fit to marry a bitch on the street." The middle-aged man was instantly enraged. He pulled out the dagger hidden in his boot and glared at her fiercely. "B****TCH. How dare you insult Boss Gil? Do you want to die? Believe it or not, we can make your little tavern go bankrupt tomorrow." Hearing this, the bartender immediately pulled out a short sword from under the table. He wanted to kill the man, but Black Lily raised her hand and stopped him. She stood up and went straight to the young man's side. She leaned on him and pretended to be a little woman. She asked pitifully, "Dear, I'm being bullied. Don't you care?" The sudden turn of events left the other 2 people in the room speechless. Everyone in the slums knew that Black Lily had always been tough and had never shown any interest in men since her debut. The probability of such a situation happening today was almost the same as the sun rising from the west. Looking at the beautiful lady beside him, the corners of Andre's mouth curled up slightly. With a playful expression, he asked, "What's the reason? Why should I meddle in this business?" From this moment on, I'm yours. From my body to my soul, You can do whatever you want of me. Is this reason enough?" As she spoke, Black Lily's slender fingers slid down the young man's neck. She pressed her nose against his ear and breathed lightly. Her entire action was full of seduction and hints. As a man with normal physiology, Andre's body began to react. He reached out his right hand to hold her waist and pulled her tightly into his embrace. With his other hand, he raised his chin and asked in a low voice, "Are you sure?" Black Lily did not hesitate to peck the young man's lips. She smiled and replied, "Of course. I know who you are and what I'm doing. What do you think? Is this reason enough?" Seeing that the two's actions were getting more and more out of hand, the middle-aged man felt the need to stand up for his boss. He shouted with a ferocious expression, "Boy, I'm warning you. You better mind your own business. Get out of here, or else. Shut up. Did I give you permission to speak?" Before he could say anything else, Andre raised his right hand impatiently. A glimmer of light flashed from the silver ring on his right hand. Following that, two magic missiles arced through the air and hit the middle-aged man's head. Bang! Bang! The ball of energy that was as powerful as a handgun bullet instantly shattered the man's skull. His entire head was like a rotten watermelon. Red and white viscous matter splattered everywhere. After that, the man fell to the ground with a thud. The bartender widened his eyes as he stared at the corpse on the ground. His body began to tremble uncontrollably. He could not believe that Gajil's #1 fighter, who was also known as the Butcher, had been killed so easily. He did not even have a chance to retaliate. Target hit. Magic missile dealt 9 points of damage to unknown human. Target's head received a fatal blow. Killed. Received 30 EXP. When a notification of the man's death popped up in his vision, Andre immediately woke up from his irritation. He frowned slightly. Perhaps it was because he had been abstinent for too long, but he would start to dream whenever he closed his eyes for the past 2 days. Sometimes it was with Serena. Sometimes it was with Elsa. Sometimes it was even with the little lowly Beverly. Clearly, it was because of Black Lily's teasing that he lost control of his emotions. Moreover, this man was indeed not a good person. That was why he accidentally killed him. Don't worry, this man is a scumbag. He has killed at least 10 innocent people. That's enough for him to go to the gallows 10 times. Black Lily thought that the young man was feeling guilty about the murder, so she spoke softly about the middle-aged man's crime. Andre took off his hood and rubbed his forehead. He explained, "I can see that he's not a good person. At the same time, he doesn't regret the murder. He's just a little dissatisfied that he lost control of himself. As a mage, you have to control your emotions and let your rationality prevail." After hearing this, Black Lily immediately laughed. She stroked the young man's handsome face and teased, "Ha ha ha ha. My dear, you have to understand that it's normal for a man to be a little irritable when he's not satisfied. Even though you're still a big boy, you've reached the age where you're interested in women." After regaining his senses, Andre gently pushed away the woman who had captivated him. He sat down on the chair and asked with a serious expression, "Speak. What do you want from me?" Although he wanted to strip the woman naked and do some indoor exercise that was good for his body and mind, he had to figure out the woman's purpose first. Chapter 64. There is no such thing as unconditional love in this world, and similarly, there was no such thing as unconditional hate. Since she was willing to pay such a huge price, it meant that she was asking for something big. After all, under normal circumstances, who would hand over the power they had built up over the years to someone else? "I want to work with you." An intimate collaboration. Black Lily did not beat around the bush and directly stated her purpose. She knew very well that anyone who could become a mage was extremely intelligent. Instead of wasting time, she might as well get straight to the point. Cooperation? Sorry, I don't see any possibility of cooperation. To put it bluntly, you can barely make a living now. You can't earn any profits, and you don't have enough power. You're not worth my time. Andre mercilessly tore apart all of the other party's dignity, using the most blatant method to declare that their relationship was not equal. If she wanted to work with him, she had to show enough sincerity, or she would not be able to take advantage of him. Even though he wanted to interfere with the association to expand his channels of information, the premise was that he had to be the leader. Otherwise, there was no room for discussion. In fact, the ruler of Linton City had yet to realize the value of the underground forces. Most of the time, as long as they did not cross the border, they would ignore them and allow them to flourish in the slums. As for the patrolling guards, as long as they received a little tribute every month, they would turn a blind eye to them. It was fine as long as they did not cause too much trouble. Ever since he discovered the internal strife in the Association of Mages, Andre had always wanted to find out what was going on. Therefore, he needed his own information network, and the association that no one cared about was a very good choice. Otherwise, he would not have stayed up in the middle of the night and come to the dirtiest, most chaotic, and most unsafe place in the city to meet the leader of the association, even if she was very beautiful. Black Lily obviously did not expect the young man in front of her to be so sharp with his words. She was stunned for a moment, and after a few minutes, she gritted her teeth and said, "I have a smuggling route that can buy some contraband items, and, at the same time, dispose of things that are inconvenient to be sold in the open." Hearing the word smuggling, Andre was stunned for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. He smiled and shook his head. Sounds good. It should be useful, but it's far from enough. In fact, he was quite surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that the other party could still afford to play such high-end, grand, and high-class games when he was so poor. One had to know that as a coastal city-state that focused on commerce, Linton City only had two types of things that were considered prohibited. The first category was items related to magic, such as potions and scrolls. In order to ensure their own advantage in the supernatural aspect, the nobles passed a law that stated that such items must be purchased by the city hall first. Therefore, all ships that went out to sea had to voluntarily declare and obtain permission before they could be sold to other countries and cities. Otherwise, if they were found out, they would be confiscated immediately. The other category was large warships, ballistas, and related blueprints. Once discovered, they would be executed without any hesitation. After all, this was the foundation of the entire city's survival. If other coastal city-states were to obtain it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Obviously, with the Black Lily's ability, the latter was basically impossible. A large ship easily cost tens of thousands of gold coins, and she couldn't afford to play with it. Thus, there was only one option left: smuggling small amounts of magical items, or rather, raw materials. After all, there were too many things that mages needed, from all kinds of strange casting materials to all kinds of potions. Most of them were scattered all over the world, and they needed to be transported through merchants. Since everyone knew how wealthy mages were, they would often impose heavy taxes on such items. Thus, smuggling came into being. Even though he had only been in civilized society for a few days, Andre already had some understanding of the entire operating system of Linton City. He had even seen the smuggling ships at the port with his own eyes. According to his guess, there were at least 3 shops in the city that secretly sold low-priced magical materials. It was just that they were more well-hidden. Seeing that the youth was unmoved, the Black Lily couldn't help but feel a little frustrated. She rolled her eyes and said unhappily, "That's it. I'm the only one left. You can take it away if you want." Ha! Andre was amused by the childishness of the woman in front of him. He laughed and explained, "Don't be angry. You should know that if we cooperate, my investment and return will be completely disproportionate. Once you've slept with me, I'll be yours, the guild will be yours, and the territory will still be yours. That way, it'll be proportionate." The Black Lily was obviously very unhappy. Thus, she did not hesitate to tear off her disguise and reveal her extremely shrewish nature, beginning to act like a rogue. The way she addressed herself as this old lady shocked Andre quite a bit, especially when she said, "Wait till you F***CK, this old lady." It made him feel like vomiting blood. The mysterious and seductive image in his heart completely collapsed with a bang. He could only sigh softly, lamenting that a beautiful image had been shattered. "Hey, what are you sighing for? Am I not beautiful? Is my body not seductive? What's more, I didn't ask you to marry me." Hearing the other party's sigh, the Black Lily was instantly furious. She even puffed out her rather voluptuous breasts. Although she had a rather fiery charm now, it was still a far cry from before. Andre rubbed his forehead and pointed to the chair opposite him. "Sit down first." "Madam, I'm afraid you still don't understand. To a woman, looks and figure are important, but temperament is more important. Do you know? I was very interested in you just now, but now I don't have any thoughts at all." "Why? Don't all men like beautiful, curvy women? Or do you prefer widows?" The Black Lily's expression suddenly showed a hint of "I understand" as she spoke. "Cough, cough, cough, cough. Nonsense. There's nothing between me and Elsa. You're slandering me." Andre coughed as he loudly proved his innocence. Fortunately, he did not drink water, or he might have choked to death. The Black Lily curled her lips in disbelief. "Forget it. You men are all the same, always chasing after novelty. The more you can't get something, the better it is. Tell me, what do I have to do for you to be willing to cooperate with me? You saw it yourself. Even that old pervert Gajeel came knocking on my door. If no one helps me, I'll be stuck in a pile of cow dung." Chapter 65. Hearing this, Andre, who had just stopped coughing, held his forehead and sighed. "Sigh, I really don't know who instilled these fallacies in you, even though some of them do make sense. Forget it. Let's talk about business first. We can cooperate, but I have to be the leader. From the moment we cooperate, you and your men have to listen to my orders." "Okay. Anyway, I'm your lover. Naturally, I'll listen to you." Black Lily agreed without any hesitation. "When did we become lovers?" Andre asked, dumbfounded. He felt that he couldn't keep up with the pace. What was going on? Black Lily shrugged her shoulders indifferently. "It's okay. I'll just sleep in the back room for a night." Shocking. Andre couldn't believe that this came from a girl's mouth. That's right. Not a woman, but a girl. When he got closer, he realized that Black Lily's forehead was smooth and clean. The tip of her nose was slightly red, and her cheeks were white and fresh. It was obvious that she was a virgin. It was hard to imagine what kind of weird way of thinking and valiant personality she had to have in order for a girl to be able to say such words that would make normal girls blush without batting an eyelid or skipping a beat. Andre felt that there must be a problem, so he stared into her eyes and asked, "Can you tell me why you're so persistent on this matter?" "Of course. My mother said 2 things to me before she died. One was that if you find a good man, you must make your move early. The other was that a man's favorite is always his lover, not his wife. I like you, and then I want to make our relationship closer. Is there a problem?" Black Lily used a righteous tone to say a set of fallacies that didn't make sense. However, from the serious expression on her face, she obviously felt that this was the most correct principle in the world. Now, Andre finally figured it out. It turned out that the girl in front of him had been seriously misled about the relationship between men and women. So she thought that after becoming his lover, she would be firmly tied to him. He had to admit that this way of thinking was extremely weird. Although it was very tempting to maintain a relationship with a beautiful woman, he immediately threw the idea to the back of his mind when he thought of the troubles that might arise in the future. He took a deep breath and said, "All right, I understand what you mean. But I'm sorry, if you continue to insist on this, then our cooperation will be forced to stop." "Reason? Give me a reason," Black Lily asked, loudly with her eyes wide open. She was obviously angry. Her beautiful face was slightly red, and her 2 hands were tightly clenched into fists. But it wasn't surprising. Any beautiful woman's self-esteem would be severely hurt if she was rejected, let alone a gang leader who ruled a quarter of the slums. "It's very simple. Your understanding of the relationship between men and women is completely wrong. I don't want to cause trouble for myself, so I can only refuse. To be honest, you're really charming. Maybe I'll consider giving a try after you become a little more normal. Also, this ring can shoot out a ray of light every day, causing the target to feel dizzy. I'll give it to you as a gift. Goodbye." With that, Andre put a dizzy ring on the table, pulled up his hood, and left the tavern. Although it was very tempting to have sex with a beautiful woman and gain control of the gang, it was far less than his moral bottom line in his eyes. This was a kind of persistence, a kind of belief, and a kind of spiritual sustenance. If it was easily broken, then this person would not be far from complete depravity. Looking at the young man completely disappear at the end of the alley, Black Lily gently picked up the ring on the table and turned to ask the bartender, "Alvin, do you think there's anything wrong with what I just did?" That mage's body clearly had a reaction, and he even gave me a magic item. Why didn't he want to sleep with me? The bartender helplessly touched the fat on his face and stuttered as he explained, Boss, if any man doesn't have a reaction when he sees you, there are only two possibilities. One is that he likes men, and the other is that a certain part of his body is not working. That mage is different from Gajeel, who only wants to take advantage of you. He seems to prefer the spiritual feeling. And you do have a little problem in that area. Spiritual? What does that mean? Black Lily frowned and looked at her subordinate. It's love, my boss. The bartender finally couldn't take it anymore and yelled out while covering his face. He couldn't believe that his boss, who could run such a large gang so well, was such an idiot when it came to relationships. He couldn't even understand such an obvious hint. Love? Well, it seems that I'll have to ask Lisa. She often hangs out with those men, so she should know something. With that, Black Lily put the magic ring on her finger and turned to walk to the second floor behind her. As for the bartender, he had completely given up on his boss. He leaned on the counter and muttered to himself, "My God, is there anything more ridiculous than asking a prostitute about love?" After wandering around the dangerous back street for half a day, Andre, who was both physically and mentally exhausted, went straight upstairs as soon as he returned to his residence. He took off his clothes and fell asleep on his bed. Perhaps it was because of the strange things that happened that night, so he had a strange dream. In the dream, he was doing something shameless with Serena, and Black Lily, who was wearing sexy lingerie, suddenly rushed in and joined the group. However, this wonderful experience didn't last long. Soon after, the two women started quarreling, and then they picked up their weapons and chased after him. They kept running. In the end, just as he was about to be cut into pieces, Andre suddenly woke up. In the end, he realized that it was just a dream. He immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. I've really gone crazy. How could I have such a dream? What a troublesome puberty. I don't know when it will end. As a person who had lived 2 lives, he knew very well that this was the restlessness of puberty. The reason why it didn't happen before was because this body had never touched a woman. But after having intimate relations with the female knight, this body naturally remembered this feeling. So he began to fantasize about having sex with every beautiful woman around him. This was a period that every man had to go through. As he grew older, it would be slightly better, but for now, he could only find a way to overcome it. Chapter 66. Climbing out of bed and putting on his clothes, Andre picked up his spellbook and began to memorize the arcane spells he needed for the day. For a mage, this was an essential part of the process. Every spell that was memorized would disappear from the mind in an instant after being cast. No one knew why, and no one knew how to overcome it. Everyone thought it was a restriction set by the gods to prevent mages from becoming too powerful. After a full hour, his mind was once again filled with all sorts of unfamiliar incantations and spell-casting movements. Only then was the entire preparation process considered complete. Next up was washing his face, brushing his teeth, and eating breakfast. After chatting with Elsa and the little Loli for a while, Andre once again left his residence and went straight to the Mage Association to exchange the 4 bottles of potions that he had made yesterday for gold coins. Since the potions could be consumed by anyone, there was an additional 25% charge on the standard spell price. This way, a level 1 potion would cost 125 gold coins, and a level 2 potion would cost 250 gold coins. The 4 bottles would cost 750 gold coins in total, and he was no longer in a pinch. Without any hesitation, he bought 2 level 2 arcane spell scrolls. They were Panic, causes creatures that are not strong enough to run away within a radius of 5 meters. Last for 6 seconds, An additional 6 seconds will be added for each level of the mage. Melf's acid arrow shoots a magic arrow made of strong acid, causing continuous damage after hitting the target. The higher the level of the mage, the longer the duration. Hiding in an empty library, Andre quickly learned the 2 arcane spells that cost 500 gold coins and copied them into his spellbook. After completing all this, he took the 200 gold coins and went straight to the president. Boris glanced at the young man and smiled. "Speak. What do you want from me?" "Master, I'm here to receive this month's mission." Andre bowed slightly as he replied. In fact, he wanted to quickly get some experience points to raise his mage level to 5 and master a powerful level 3 arcane spell. When the time came, he would have something to rely on, whether it was hunting monsters in the wild or going out to sea to take a look at other cities. "Receive a mission? So fast. You've only been in Lincoln City for a few days, haven't you?" Boris took off his glasses with a puzzled expression on his face. Just like the saying goes, the more powerful a person is, the more they hate restrictions. That was why most mages were free and undisciplined. Even though they were paid handsomely, they had always been willing to put off such compulsory duties as much as possible. This was the first time someone had come to them on their own accord. Seeing the puzzled look in the guild leader's eyes, Andre shrugged and said the excuse he had prepared, "I have no choice. I want to buy a ship to go out to sea, but I don't have enough money on me, so I can only do some missions." After hearing this, Boris's expression changed slightly. He asked very seriously, "Buy a ship and go out to sea? Why?" "There's no particular reason. Firstly, I think sailboats are very beautiful. Secondly, I used to live inland, and I want to experience the magnificence of the sea for myself." Andre noticed that something was amiss with the guild leader's mood and immediately explained. He didn't want to be misunderstood, especially by powerful mages. Boris narrowed his eyes and looked at him for a long time before finally, sighing softly, "Sigh, it seems like you really don't know anything, but that's good too. Remember, don't go out to sea or buy a ship in the next few months. Otherwise, something terrible will happen. Here, this is a mission. Pick one." After saying that, the guild leader took out a piece of parchment paper from a pile and threw it directly onto the table. Feeling that the situation was getting stranger and stranger, Andre didn't try to find out the reason. He silently picked up the parchment paper and looked at the mission recorded on it. From his point of view, either something big was going to happen at sea, or it was related to the conflict within the guild. Either way, it was going to be very complicated, so it was better to leave it alone for now. Mission: Viscount Bernie requests a wizard to teach his son a 4-hour magic lesson. Reward: 300 gold coins. Mission: assist the army in clearing out the Kobold tribe 40 kilometers away from the city. Reward: 400 gold coins. Mission: investigate the ruins deep in the western forest. You need to find the entrance and bring back a complete map. Reward: 800 gold coins. Mission: find and kill the pirate group hidden in the sewers. Be aware that they may have spellcasters, so please be careful. Reward: 5,000 gold coins. Glancing at the variety of missions with different rewards, Andre raised his head and asked, "Master, why are there so many requests from nobles?" "Because it's good for us to maintain a close relationship with nobles. Not to mention, they don't usually have excessive requests, and they're very generous when it comes to giving money." Boris replied without raising his head. Andre suddenly understood and nodded. "So it's political. Then what's with this pirate group hidden in the sewers? Is there a mage among them?" Hearing about the pirate group, President Boris finally raised his head and explained, "Spellcasters don't mean that they are mages. They can also be warlocks who have activated their bloodline power, druids who maintain the balance of nature, priests who have been blessed with divine spells by the gods, or bards who like to play with fancy tricks. These people who can use supernatural powers can all be called spellcasters." Speaking up to this point, his face suddenly became gloomy. "These pirates are a bit troublesome. They are very strong. The city guard sent 3 feudal knights and 40 elite soldiers to investigate, but they all died. One of them was actually smiling after he died, so it was determined that it was the effect of a spell. Then, It was pushed to us and promised that whoever completed this quest would immediately become a baron and receive a reward of 5,000 gold coins. There were also other rewards, such as a large manor. But I advise you not to accept this mission, because it's just too dangerous. Can't we just send the army to investigate the entire sewers? Andre didn't understand. It was clearly a problem that could be easily solved, so why did they have to make it so complicated? They had the home advantage, but they didn't know how to make use of their advantage in numbers. After all, there were a total of 3,500 professional soldiers stationed in Lincoln City. If half of them were mobilized, they would be able to plow the entire sewers in 2 hours. Not to mention a group of living people. Even a mouse wouldn't be able to escape. Although Lincoln City was only a small city, it radiated countless towns and villages around it through trade. It was basically no different from a country. As long as they were determined, it wouldn't be too difficult to get rid of a group of troublesome pirates. Chapter 67. It's no use. Those guys have planted spies in the city. Once there are signs of a large-scale deployment of troops, they will disappear without a trace. I think they must have taken a ship out to sea. They should have a secret dock nearby. In the past 2 months, 14 merchant ships have been looted. The nobles in the city hall are going crazy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have offered such a high reward. After saying that, Boris's mouth curved into a smile. It was unknown whether it was a mocking or playful smile. Obviously, the president was happy to see the nobles in a flurry. Maybe it was because of his bad taste, or maybe it was because of the power struggle. Andre frowned and thought for 10 minutes. Finally, he made up his mind and decided to take the risk. I'll accept this mission. I promise I'll give you an answer in 5 days. As soon as he said that, a row of messages popped up in his vision. You've accepted the mission. Find and kill the pirate group hidden in the sewers alone. Difficulty: extremely dangerous. Mission completion reward: 8,000 EXP. As the difficulty of the mission exceeds the danger level, you'll be rewarded with an additional 2 basic attribute points after completing the mission. Note: this mission has exceeded your strength by too much. You may lose your life at any time. After reading all of it, he was not afraid at all. Instead, he was a little excited. Dangerous? Could it be more dangerous than Ulysses? According to the classification of mages, this powerful necromancer was at least level 14 to 16. It might even be higher. If he was alone, he could turn a city into a purgatory in minutes. A group of people that even thousands of ordinary soldiers had to avoid could not be that powerful. So, as long as he set a trap in advance like before, he would be able to get rid of them easily. Most importantly, he finally found a second way to gain EXP other than killing, and that was to continuously complete missions. One had to know that killing Ulysses only gave him 5,000 EXP. Now, just by completing a mission, he could get 8,000 EXP, and that was not counting the EXP gained from killing. It was like someone had sent him a pillow just as he was about to doze off. The more he learned about mages, the more Andre realized that this profession consumed EXP too quickly. Not to mention the consumption of potions and items. The amount of EXP needed to level up was quite terrifying. 1,000 EXP for level 1, 2,000 EXP for level 2. At this rate, by the time he reached level 8 or level 9, it would be an astronomical figure. With an extreme thirst for experience points, he quickly bid farewell to Boris and planned to return to his residence to prepare, especially to copy a few more scrolls in case he needed them. After accepting this dangerous task, Andre spent the next few days eliminating all distractions and devoting himself to the preparation work. Even the cute little lowly Beverly was neglected. She could only read Magic Enlightenment for the second time every day. He was very clear that since the system had determined that his danger level was extremely high, it meant that he had no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation. So, he once again used his trump card. Unlike the last time, he used a simpler but more ferocious blazing fire glue and white phosphorus Molotov cocktail. Thanks to the relatively advanced chemistry system of this world, Many things that only appeared in the industrial age on Earth had already been discovered by the mages. However, due to the low production rate, it was still impossible for them to be used on a large scale. However, it was not a problem for them to make some for their own use. In fact, the use of some of the mages' weapons of mass destruction was limited to spell-casting materials, or the additives used to make certain magic items. Take white phosphorus, for example. As long as you add some to black gunpowder, the power would instantly increase by 10 times. Not only could it produce an unextinguishable high-temperature flame, but it could also produce a highly toxic poison. As long as the dosage was enough, it could completely burn a person alive into ashes. Such a terrifying weapon could completely change the current war where cold weapons were the main weapon. However, the mages only saw it as a common spell-casting material and poison. They simply did not discover its true use. Of course, this might have something to do with the amount used. Most of the mages would only buy 1 or 200 grams at a time. They had not yet discovered the terrible lethality of the white phosphorus Molotov cocktail. Due to the low production rate, Andre spent a lot of effort to buy 2 kilograms, spending a total of 50 gold coins. Then, he mixed it with his own black gunpowder and put it into 3 prepared glass bottles. Then he stuffed the blazing fire glue and used a linen cloth soaked in oil to seal it. Such a frightening white phosphorus Molotov cocktail was completed. Although there were only 3 of them, their power was not to be underestimated, especially in a narrow place like the sewers. Once they exploded, there would be nowhere to hide. In addition, he did not hesitate to waste his experience points to copy a lot of arcane scrolls and to make a lot of magic potions. His experience points were flowing out like water. In just 2 days, his experience points had shrunk by a quarter, leaving him with only 1,400 points. When everything was ready, Andre went to the blacksmith shop on the 3rd day to take back the custom-made sleeve arrows, pulley crossbow, tri-edge dagger, and alcohol lighter. He had to admit that the blacksmith's craftsmanship was not bad, especially the exquisite lighter. It was simply a work of art. After filling the lighter with alcohol, the lighter would be ignited immediately. Once the lid was closed, the lighter would be extinguished in the blink of an eye. After smearing all the arrows and tri-edge daggers with aconitum root, Lucien carefully tied the sleeve arrows to his arm, tied the quiver to his weapon, and carried the crossbow on his back. He put all the potions and scrolls in his bag, and hung the 3 Molotov cocktails next to his belt. After making sure that he did not miss anything, Lucien took a deep breath and walked out of the room. "Are you going somewhere far away?" Elsa stopped what she was doing and looked up at Lucien. "No, I'm just in the city. If I'm lucky, I'll be back before dark." Andre pretended to be relaxed. Elsa looked at Lucien from head to toe for a few seconds and then pointed at his equipment. "You're a powerful sorcerer? You don't need to carry weapons in the city. Don't lie to me. Are you going to the wild?" Andre could only shake his head with a bitter smile. "I'm not lying to you. It's indeed inside the city. It's just that it's not on the surface, but underground. Goddess of Dawn bless you. You're going to the sewers. That's even more dangerous than the wild." Elsa shouted in shock. As a local resident, she had heard too many horrible stories about the sewers. There were all kinds of man-eating monsters, horrifying giant beasts, and robbers and gangsters who sneaked into the sewers. Chapter 68. I have no choice. I've accepted a mission from the Association of Sorcerers, so I have to go in. Don't worry, I have the ability to protect myself. As he spoke, Andre walked forward and gently wrapped his arms around the young widow's waist. He felt her well-developed body and gently kissed her seductive lips. Then, he let go of his hands and pushed open the door to leave the house. Elsa stood there with her eyes blurred. It took her 2 to 3 minutes to regain consciousness. She hurriedly touched her lips and stole a glance at her daughter, who was concentrating on her reading. She was relieved when she made sure that the little girl did not notice. She hurriedly ran back to her room and closed the door. The kiss just now made her body, which had not been nourished by a man for a long time, surge with lust. In just a few seconds, her underwear was already soaked. She had to change, or a special smell would soon spread out. Andre did not know that his kiss had pried open the young widow's heart. Even if he knew, he would just smile. He secretly picked a day to have a little intimate relationship with her to relieve his adolescent body's desire for the opposite sex. For a person who walked on the path of pursuing power, he had never thought of marrying a wife like an ordinary person and spending the rest of his life with her. That was too extravagant. The path of arcane magic was destined to be lonely. The so-called love was just a beautiful scenery on the road. He could stop and admire it for a while and rest his tired spirit before continuing on his journey. Once a sorcerer's level reached a certain level, they would gain an extremely long lifespan. Ulysses had already proven this point. He had used some kind of method to devour souls and occupy a body, giving himself an almost eternal life. In addition, the kind of medicine that had not been successfully developed was even more powerful. Once the research was completed, it could definitely turn a person into a powerful undead creature. Imagine how torturous it would be for a person to watch his beloved woman, friends, relatives, and descendants grow old and die one after another. It was fine if it was just one or two people, but after a long time, he would either become an extremely cold-blooded monster or fall into the memories of the past due to excessive grief. The giving and returning of feelings was a heavy burden. It represented responsibility and family. Except for those completely selfish bastards, even the evilest person would leave a pure land in their heart to remember the most important person in their life. Andre didn't want to try either of the two states of cold-blooded Tong. Therefore, he decided not to get too close to anyone. Like a passerby, he would try his best to look at the world rationally. Of course, this wasn't absolute. After all, humans were very complicated creatures. Sometimes, they couldn't control their emotions without safety. If he met someone who truly moved his heart, he wouldn't mind starting a passionate relationship. As for the consequences, let's talk about it later. But up until now, he hadn't had such an impulse. Even Serena, who was extremely close to him, only wanted to save someone in the beginning. Even though they had good feelings for each other, it wasn't to the point where they would talk about marriage. As for what would happen in the future, time would tell. As a drainage system that had existed together with Linton City for hundreds of years, the sewers were filled with a pungent smell. All kinds of garbage mixed with feces flowed into the sea under the scouring of the sewage. It was hard to imagine that there would be so many people living in such a harsh environment. It was really hard to imagine how they could swallow their food. What was more frightening was that some of the rats here had grown to half a meter long. They stared with their sneaky eyes and weren't afraid of humans at all. All right, now I'm starting to believe that there are terrifying monsters here. Andre mumbled to himself as he took out a bottle of magic potion and drank it. In an instant, a layer of invisible force field formed around his body. The level, one arcane spell, Mage's Armor, could provide some protection against all physical attacks. It was like wearing a piece of weightless leather armor. He was very clear that since there were such large rats in the sewers, it meant that there was a fixed food chain. Some insects or bacteria fed on the garbage, and the rats fed on these bacteria and insects, with fat rats. All kinds of carnivores would have food to eat. It was completely possible for them to survive and develop in this filthy environment. It was an extremely unique biosphere, a dark world hidden under a bustling city, a dangerous place where monsters would jump out from who knows where. As an experienced hunter, Andre knew how to hide his tracks. Although this wasn't the forest he was most familiar with, he could still handle it with ease. Not long after, he took a look at the sewer structure map he'd obtained from President Boris. After confirming his location, he headed deeper into one of the pipes. He didn't know if it was because of the years of disrepair or if someone had deliberately dug some forks in the road. But it didn't take long for Andre to find that the map was completely useless. The entire sewers were like a huge maze. Apart from a few main roads, the rest of the sewers were crisscrossed. Often, a turn would lead to 4 or 5 directions. Who knew which way was the right one? In order to ensure that he didn't get lost, he began to make markings along the way to prevent himself from getting lost when he returned or ran away. After searching for an entire hour, A ray of light suddenly appeared in front of him, followed by the sound of a few people talking. From the swaying shadows, it was obvious that they were humanoids. However, they weren't speaking the common language, but a short, roaring language. After standing on the spot for a few minutes, Andre finally found a sense of familiarity. The goblins he'd encountered in the forest a few days ago seemed to be speaking this language. It was obvious that the creatures in front of him weren't humans, but a subspecies of the goblin family. They should be much taller than ordinary goblins. Looks like it's time for slaughter. Let me use your blood to open the curtain of this dangerous mission, Leyland muttered to himself. After muttering softly, he pulled open the pulley crossbow and inserted an arrow into the groove. He tiptoed along the wall and approached silently. A dozen seconds later, he saw these ugly monsters. They were a group of humanoid creatures with metal helmets on their heads and gray spots all over their bodies. Their facial features were ugly, especially their noses and mouths that resembled wild boars. Their rusty armor couldn't hide the bloated bodies of the wearers. Most importantly, a smell like feces drifted with the wind. It was so pungent even in the sewers. Chapter 69. Gnomes. They were one of the subspecies of the gnome family. They were different from the cowardly and despicable gnomes. They were a militarized race and were extremely aggressive. They often attacked other humanoid races. They relied on their rich personal combat skills and strict organizational discipline. Almost all of them were skilled warriors. Their combat power was stronger than most human soldiers. Andre did not spend any effort to recognize these guys. He began to silently count the number of gnomes. At the same time, he observed the situation of the camp and prepared for the upcoming battle. Before he came here, he had already asked President Boris about the people who lived in the sewers. He knew that all the people who lived in the sewers deserved to die. They were 100% vile murderers. Otherwise, they wouldn't hide in such a filthy place. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about killing them. He could strike first and gain the upper hand. With his years of experience, he quickly figured out the situation in the camp. There were a total of 7 earth goblins. 2 of them were standing guard outside, looking like they were on guard duty. The other 3 were discussing something by the bonfire, and the last 2 were sleeping soundly on the straw mats. Looking at the messy pile of furniture, clothes, and all kinds of other items, this should be a group of habitual robbers. Obviously, if he wanted to end the battle as quickly as possible, he would have to throw a Molotov cocktail inside. Judging from the number of flammable items inside, it would definitely be enough to burn the 7 earth goblins alive. It would be as easy as blowing off dust. But unfortunately, the white phosphorus Molotov cocktail was prepared for those troublesome pirates. Therefore, Andre quickly thought of a way. He carefully fixed the crossbow with a rope and aimed at one of the gnomes guarding outside. He then quietly went to the other side and pulled the rope. The trigger was pulled, and a sharp arrow instantly pierced through the air. Whoosh! With a scream, one of the gnomes fell to the ground. The terrifying, penetrating force pierced through its head. It died on the spot. Hit the vital point. Fatal strike activated. 15 points of damage dealt to the gnome. Target's brain destroyed. Dead. Received 50 experience points. The notifications in his vision were, as usual, indicating that the unlucky gnome was already dead. It had to be said that earth goblins were indeed 100 times stronger than goblins. It could be seen from the experience points alone. 50 experience points meant that the guy who died was at least a professional and not an ordinary civilian. The other earth goblin standing at the side immediately shouted to the other earth goblin behind him and quickly ran forward. The 3 earth goblins who were chatting hurriedly pulled out their weapons and followed behind, leaving their 2 sleeping earth goblins behind. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, the corners of Andre's mouth curled up slightly. He immediately rushed to the sleeping gnomes like a shadow. Without any hesitation, he pulled out the tri-edged thorn and aimed it at each of their eyes. Hit the vitals. Critical strike activated. 19 damage dealt to Great Earth Goblin. Target's brain has been destroyed. Death. Obtained 50 EXP. In the blink of an eye, Another 250 EXP points were added to their account. They didn't even have time to react before they were killed in their sleep. After completing the sneak attack, he didn't stop. Instead, he quickly chased after the Earth Goblin and covered its mouth from the back. Then he stabbed the Earth Goblin's head from the side and gently put it down on the ground. 1, 2, 3. Silently, 6 of the 7 Earth Goblins had died. They didn't even have time to display their skillful fighting skills. Sometimes life seemed so fragile. As long as the dagger was lightly slashed across the throat or pierced through a few vital parts, no matter how strong you were, you would still die. The last remaining Earth Goblin didn't realize that its companions had died. It was still squatting on the ground and checking the crossbow that was tied to the corner of the wall. At the same time, it was muttering in goblin language. No one knew if it was cursing or asking for its companion's opinion. However, it didn't matter. Andre raised a tri-edged thorn and stabbed it fiercely at the Earth Goblin's back. At this moment, the Earth Goblin seemed to have noticed something. It suddenly took a step forward and paid the price of an injury on its thigh to avoid the fatal blow. Ah, ah, ah. It cried out in pain while it turned around and waved the spear in its hand. It wanted to stab the attacker to death. This Earth Goblin obviously had a lot of battle experience. In just a few seconds, it had forced the young boy into a panic. The spear in its hand was like a living thing, stabbing at the vital parts of the body. The angle was both cruel and tricky. Andre had no choice but to use the level 0 spell on his ring, stun spell. A dazzling light flashed, and the Earth Goblin immediately stopped attacking. It held its head and stood still. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly retreated to a safe distance. Then he stood still and waited silently. He didn't attack, nor did he continue to run. According to the time, the poison of the aconite that was smeared on the weapon was about to take effect. After a few seconds, the Earth Goblin completely woke up from the stun spell. Soon, it began to feel numb all over. Its face was pale, and its hands were covering its heart. Not long after, it fell to the ground and went into a state of shock. As one of the most poisonous herbs, ingesting a few grams of aconite was enough to cause poisoning. If the dosage exceeded a certain level, it would cause heart rhythm disorder and sudden cardiac arrest. Judging from the large amount of liquid smeared on the weapon, the Earth Goblin's symptoms were obviously the latter. Without any mercy, Andre directly took 2 steps forward and finished off the last enemy. 1 Earth Goblin gave 50 EXP, and 7 Earth Goblins gave him 350 EXP. His undistributed EXP had risen to 1750 EXP. It was a great harvest. After a simple search of the camp and the corpses, he found more than 20 gold coins, nearly 100 silver coins, and a few pieces of jewelry. As for the stinky armor and weapons, he didn't even look at them. After all, he still had to continue to explore the place, and he couldn't carry anything too heavy. So he could only take away the valuable and light loot. This was something he learned from Alger. While searching for valuable items, Andre found a large amount of clothes, furniture, and decorations. Some of them looked very new. They must have been robbed in the last few days. After all, the environment in the sewers was too humid, and there were a lot of rats. He believed that after 2 weeks, they would immediately become moldy, and the wooden furniture would be bitten beyond recognition. Chapter 70. Through these items, Andre could easily tell that the goblins relied on robbing to survive. They even had people who specialized in selling their stolen goods. This was also why jewelry was so rare. These items were small in size and high in value, making them easier to sell for a good price. Furniture and decorations were the exact opposite. Not only were they difficult to sell, but they could also be recognized. It was not worth it at all. Criminals and selling stolen goods. There are many secrets hidden in the sewers. Looks like I've made the right choice in coming here. After saying that, Andre revealed a meaningful smile on his face. He kept the rope and continued forward with the crossbow. He had a strong premonition that there was a hidden system behind the prosperity of Lincoln City. The sewers were a part of this system, and so was the smuggling. Without the support of some big shot, it would have been impossible to develop to such a scale. Exploring the sewers was not an easy task, especially the labyrinthine passages. It was enough to make most people have a nervous breakdown. Coupled with the monsters that appeared from time to time, it could be described as dangerous. As there was no clock or other similar timer, Andre quickly lost the concept of time. He did not know how long he had walked, nor whether it was day or night. After killing 2 groups of ordinary goblins, he finally found traces of his target. It was a karst cave connected to the sewers. From the faint smell of blood that came from within, there was no doubt that it led to the sea. After carefully taking a few steps forward, a large wooden sailboat first came into view. Following, there was a group of noisy humans sitting on the deck. They were all wearing short shirts, with weapons such as scimitars, long swords, daggers, and other weapons at their waists. They were drinking and shouting at the top of their lungs. In addition, there were many goods with different trade associations stacked on the shore. There were also dozens of naked women tied to the side of the mast. A few men were lying on top of them, mercilessly thrusting into them with all their might, venting their bestial desires. Obviously, these guys were wanted pirates. There were at least 40 of them. There was no chance of winning in a direct confrontation. Most importantly, there was no trace of the spellcaster or the captain. After calmly observing for a while, Andre decided to take the risk and sneak into the cabin to investigate. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous to act rashly. Without any hesitation, he took out a bottle of invisibility potion and drank it. A second later, his entire body became transparent and finally disappeared without a trace. Only the occasional ripples in the air could prove that there was a living person standing here, but most people would not be able to detect it. After confirming that he was completely invisible, he took large strides and quickly ran back to the ship. The effect of the invisibility potion could only last for about 10 minutes. During this time, not only did he have to complete the investigation of the cabin, but he also had to retreat to a safe area, or face the danger of being surrounded by 40 people. Even though mages were extremely powerful, they lacked the ability to attack large groups of people before they grasped a Tier 3 Arcane spell. As such, once they were surrounded, they could only use white phosphorus incendiary bombs. However, the danger of this thing was slightly higher. If he was too close, he could be implicated. As a transmigrator who knew the power of white phosphorus, Andre did not want to come into contact with it at all. Thus, he had to end the battle quickly. Following the wooden ladder that was lowered from the ship, he easily arrived at the noisy deck. He tiptoed through the crowd, and the whole process was extremely thrilling. There were a few times when he was almost bumped into by the drunken pirates. Finally, he safely entered the cabin and began to search for the captain and the spellcaster mentioned in the intelligence report. After silently walking down the stairs, Andre looked around cautiously. After confirming that there was no one around, he began to study the internal structure of the ship. Compared to the narrow corridors of modern ships, the wooden sailboat had very few compartments, so the passageway was relatively spacious. Not far ahead, there were a few hammocks hung, and a dozen pirates were lying on them, snoring loudly. The deafening shouts covered the slight sounds of footsteps on the wooden floor. He had already carefully observed it when he was outside. This was a large 3-decker caravel sailboat that was popular in the 15th century on Earth. There were at least 10 ballistae on the deck, and it had 4 masts. Its carrying capacity was between 3 to 350 tons, and its hull was much more slender than the cargo ships at the port of Linton City. At first glance, it was obvious that it was specially designed to pursue speed. Regardless of whether the wind was blowing, it would definitely be able to catch up with most targets. There was no doubt that this was a standard pirate ship. It was fast, agile, and good at turning. It was no wonder that it could successfully ransack so many merchant ships in just 2 months. It would be strange if the nobles did not panic. It was important to know that in the era of wooden sailboats, robbery was not like in modern times. A speedboat, a few guns, and a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher could solve the problem. From tracking to chasing, it would often take days or even months. Moreover, There was no way to retreat in the vast sea, so most of the crew would fight to the death. Coupled with the cold weapons, the cost of each robbery was not small at all. From the looting efficiency of these guys in front of him, Andre could easily infer that their fighting strength must be very strong. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to consecutively commit crimes in such a short period of time without the patrolling Navy catching a single strand of hair. After roughly sizing up the internal environment, he did not hesitate and walked directly to the stern of the ship. According to the concept of a double-decker sailboat, the lowest level was generally where the ballast and cargo were stacked. The upper level was generally the kitchen, where food, fresh water, and crew members were stored. Generally speaking, the captain's room was placed at the end. Quickly passing through the crew's resting area, which was full of hammocks, Andre was unimpeded. However, when he passed through the kitchen, an accident occurred. The fierce quarrel inside made him stop and stand at the door to listen carefully. "Little bitch, don't be so shameless. I've already let you hide in this place for 2 weeks. Today, no matter what, you have to let me have some fun." This person's voice was rough. It was likely that he was the ship's cook, and it seemed like he was threatening someone. "Get lost. My father is Count Luke. If you dare to touch me, you're dead." A few seconds later, another childlike voice pierced through the air. Although it sounded aggressive, the trembling voice showed the fear in the owner's heart at the moment. Chapter 71. Huh, stop scaring me. Even if it's true, your father can't control the pirates of the Sardinia Islands. You have to do it today, even if you can't. I can't wait any longer. Come on. No, no, don't. Don't come over. Get lost. You damn fat pig. Shout. This is a pirate ship. It's useless even if you shout until your throat breaks. Hee, let me have a good time. Otherwise, I'll kill you and throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Under the threat of the rude voice, the child inside stopped shouting and began to cry in a low voice. It was followed by a ripping sound. It should be that the child's clothes were torn apart. Andre, who originally planned to keep a low profile, sighed slightly. He pulled out the tri-edged dagger with a cold light and gently pushed the door open. Unlike the women on the deck who had been trampled on many times and were like walking corpses, this child had not been violated. As a person who strictly adhered to the bottom line of morality, he could not just watch this happen and ignore it. Fortunately, there were not many people in the cabin. As long as the corpse and the smell of blood could be covered, it should not be discovered by outsiders for a short period of time. Squeezing through the gap of the door, the dirty and messy pirate's kitchen made Andre choke. In particular, the thick rancid smell made him want to vomit out his dinner from last night. It was even worse than the stench in the sewers. In a corner, a fatty weighing more than 100 kilograms was tearing the dress of a 14 or 15-year-old girl with long black hair. His slightly bloodshot eyes were like that of a crazy wild boar. The pitiful little girl, other than crying in despair, didn't even have the slightest movement to resist, because with her strength, she didn't without much time to think. Andre rushed forward and stabbed the tri-edged dagger into the man's neck. Poof! In an instant, the terrifying sharp weapon completely pierced through the back of the fatty's head and neck. A large amount of blood spurted out in an instant, spraying all over the girl's body and face. Then, the fatty fell to the ground with a plop. This attack was so accurate that he didn't even have time to let out a scream. Hit the vital point. Fatal blow activated. Dealt 17 points of damage to the pirate. Target's brain stem destroyed. Dead. Obtained 30 EXP. Since he had initiated the attack, the effect of the invisibility potion immediately disappeared, and Andre's figure was quickly revealed. He ignored the dead fatty and covered the girl who was about to scream. He lowered his voice and explained, "Don't shout. I am here to save you. Relax. Take a deep breath. Don't make a sound, or we'll be surrounded by countless pirates." Perhaps it was the gentle words that worked, or perhaps it was because the young man didn't look like a bad person. The girl finally calmed down and stopped struggling. She gently removed the hand from her mouth and asked in the same soft voice, "Who are you? How could he be on this pirate ship? Also, was that magical power that appeared out of nowhere?" Although her dress was tattered, she still maintained her temperament. At first glance, it was obvious that she had received good education. Even if she was only wearing a white corset, she did not give off a frivolous feeling, especially the white silk stockings wrapped around her slender legs, making her look like a princess in distress. Andre did not immediately answer the girl's question. Instead, he opened his cloak and revealed the badge on his chest. "I am a member of the Mage Association. I received a mission to investigate the hidden pirates in the sewers." "Who are you? Why did you appear in the pirate ship's kitchen?" "Linton City Mage Association. Goddess of Dawn, Goddess bless. After so long, we finally waited for rescue. If you were a step late, I can't imagine what would have happened next. You are my hero." As she spoke, the excited girl rushed forward to hug the young man and gave him a passionate kiss. Her whole body clung to him like an octopus. After a full minute, she released her mouth and took a deep breath to calm her emotions. She took out a pendant engraved with complicated patterns from the large cleavage on her chest. "My name is Chloe Marie. I am a daughter of Count Luke of Naples City. This is the badge of nobility. Half a month ago, I was on the lady to visit my relatives in Linton City. Who would have thought that before I reached the port, I would be attacked by a group of cruel, dirty, and despicable pirates near the coast? The men were all killed, and the women were raped by them. I used 2 pearl bracelets to bribe the cook and hid here for a few days. Who would have thought that this lowly pig would want to rape me? Fortunately, you reacted at the crucial moment, my hero." Seeing that the passionate, noble girl was about to kiss him again, Andre quickly covered her mouth with his hand. "Shh, lower your voice. I can't deal with so many pirates at once. Now tell me, is there anyone on this ship that needs special attention, such as the captain or someone with supernatural powers?" In fact, it was not that he was not interested in this beautiful girl, but she had not cleaned her teeth for a long time. Her mouth was full of a strange smell, and she had not bathed for a long time. Even if he was interested, he would have to take a good bath first. After all, no matter how beautiful a beauty was, most people would stay away from her. Of course, those perverts who thought that a beauty's fart was fragrant were not included. Upon mentioning the important members of the ship, Crowley's body began to tremble slightly. His 2 beautiful large eyes were filled with fear, and his 2 hands were tightly clenched into fists. He clenched his teeth and said with a trembling voice, "I've seen the captain before. He's a man in his early 30s with an extremely terrifying scar on his face. He has short brown hair and is wearing a shiny chainmail. He's both formidable and ruthless. With a single slash, he sliced my personal knight in half. No one on a lady is his opponent. Even the experienced captain wasn't able to do so. He killed a feudal knight in an instant." Andre was so shocked that his mouth was agape. His face was full of shock. He did not dare to imagine how powerful it would be to be able to cut a knight who was wearing a full body armor. His strength, reflexes, and muscle strength were all several times stronger than a normal person. It must be known that this was not Earth. Once a feudal knight's muscles were taut, they were no different from a rock. Ulysses only needed a few minutes to dissect an ordinary soldier, but a feudal knight needed a full half an hour. It could be seen how difficult it was. Andre had been in close contact with the female knight, Serena, many times. He knew very well how strong she was when her muscles were tensed up when she was excited. Therefore, his expression instantly turned a little ugly. Chapter 72. Yes, but it should have something to do with the weapon in his hand. If I'm not wrong, that's a scimitar made from the rare metal mithril. The material alone is worth tens of thousands of gold coins, and only dwarven blacksmiths can refine this metal. Chloe covered her mouth with lingering fear and whispered her judgment. As a girl born in a great noble family, she was particularly sensitive to rare and valuable items. When she first saw that silver-white scimitar, she instantly knew that it was not an ordinary item. Mithril scimitar? How could a group of pirates have such a precious item? Andre muttered to himself with a frown. He had once seen the introduction of this metal in a book about forging. Simply put, this was an extremely special magical metal. After refining, it would be silvery white in color. It was stronger than steel, but it was also extremely light. It was an excellent material for forging armor and weapons. Mages also liked to use in magic circles, enchantments, making rings, amulets, and other items. It could play an unexpected role in fighting against otherworldly creatures, especially demons and devils. According to the records in the book, there were not many mithril reserves in the entire world, and most of it was controlled by the dwarves who liked to live underground. Only a very small portion circulated in the human world. Countless powerful warriors and knights often had to go through a lot of trouble to obtain a weapon or armor made of mithril, and in the end, they might not be able to get it. As for the price, it was incomparably expensive. A piece the size of a fingernail cost more than 300 Alliance gold coins. Ordinary people could not buy it even if they had the money, let alone a finished scimitar. It might not even be possible to get it for 100,000 gold coins. Andre could not understand at all. Where did a group of pirates get such a precious item? Could it be that these guys had a backer? After thinking about it for a few minutes, he felt that this possibility was very high. After all, the navy of Lincoln City was famous. Ordinary pirates could not wait to avoid it, so why would they commit crimes right under their noses? Robbing 14 ships in 2 months, even a noble girl like Chloe was not spared. Whether it was the degree of their boldness or the frequency of their robberies, it could be described as completely deranged. There were only 2 kinds of people who dared to do this. One was boundlessly arrogant, as if they were looking for death. The other was fearless. Not only did they have a thorough plan, but they also had a very strong backer. The pirates in front of him clearly belonged to the latter. Based on a number of robberies, the goods piled up outside were obviously not enough. This meant that someone was selling their loot and providing them with supplies. After thinking it through, Andre immediately began to have a headache. He could not make a decision. Now, he had 2 choices. One of them was to follow his original plan and kill every last one of the pirates. That way, he would be able to obtain a generous amount of rewards and experience points. However, the consequence of doing so would be that he would offend the mastermind. The other choice was to escape with this noble lady and report the situation here to the Sorcerers Association. The advantage was that he would not have to offend anyone. The consequence was that his rewards would decrease and his experience points would fly away. Obviously, choosing the first option could greatly increase his strength in a short period of time and at the same time promote him to a noble. This was not to be underestimated. Orire was still a feudal system, so once he obtained the title of a noble, it meant that he had become a member of the ruling class. No matter where he went in the future, as long as he revealed his identity, he would immediately receive the corresponding respect. Although the identity of a mage could achieve this, one was recognition in terms of strength, while the other was recognition in terms of faction. The effects were completely different. Of course, the risk he had to bear was not small, especially since the other party dared to send pirates to rob a powerful city like Lincoln City. It was either the pirate king of the Sardinia Islands or other cities of the Green Sea Alliance. It could also be some hostile forces. In short, the enemy's power was definitely not small. Although the risk of the second option was almost negligible, he was unwilling to just watch the 8,000 mission experience disappear like this. After struggling for a long time, Andre finally gritted his teeth and decided to take the risk and wipe them all out. In any case, he would be prepared to face assassination in the future. After all, as long as his mage level increased, he would not need to fear any forces or individuals. After making up his mind, he immediately took out a bottle of invisibility potion from his waist pouch and handed it to the girl. "Take it, drink it, and immediately leave this ship and find a corner outside to hide. Also, take off your tattered skirt, and it's best to take off your socks. It'll be lighter for you to walk. Also, be careful. Don't make a sound, or you'll immediately reveal your true form." You're not coming with me?" Chloe asked in surprise, holding the bottle. Andre smiled and shook his head. No, I have to kill all the pirates here and save the women who have been ravaged by them. Remember, no matter what you see or hear later, you must hold it in. Oh, my God, you're really a gentleman. You're still thinking about those poor maids. All right, I'll find a safe place to hide and wait for you to come out. After saying that, Chloe blushed and took off her tattered skirt, followed by her white stockings. Finally, she was only left with a tight corset. Her two slender legs were completely exposed. Through the translucent chiffon, one could even vaguely see the black hair on her lower abdomen. She took a few deep breaths, opened the cork, and drank the potion in one gulp. After a few seconds, she completely disappeared. Then, the kitchen door was open a crack. It seemed that she had already left. After Andre confirmed that the girl had really left, he quickly stood up and closed the door. He picked up the white stockings on the ground and carefully examined them. Don't misunderstand, this wasn't because he had a special hobby, but because he wanted to see what material this thing was made of. This was because the elasticity and transparency of this pair of stockings were very similar to the nylon on Earth. If it was true, then it meant that someone in this world had mastered the technology of synthetic fibers. Its value was simply immeasurable. But after only half a minute, his face showed an extremely disappointed expression. Although the silk thread was very elastic, very transparent, and also very strong. Even if he used force to tear, it would be difficult to break. But it didn't look like a synthetic material. It was more like silk spat out by some kind of creature, because it was really too thin and very soft to the touch. Whether it was color or elasticity, it far exceeded any known fiber. After using force to stretch, it could even be stretched to more than 5 times its original length. Chapter 73. Well, I should have thought of it earlier. This world doesn't even have the basic knowledge of chemistry. How could it be possible to develop such high-end synthetic fibers? Andre sighed slightly, threw the socks in his hand to the side, and immediately began to chant a spell in a low voice. A circular complex pattern appeared on the ground, followed by a dazzling, colorful light. A second later, Little Eye appeared in the same place. When the little guy saw its master, it immediately flew over happily, rubbing against him like a kitten or a puppy, and made a whining sound. Andre patted the magic pet's head gently and said with a smile, "Well, be quiet. Our enemies are everywhere on this ship. Now we have to think of a way to take them all down. Otherwise, if more people die, it will definitely attract attention." And then, before he finished speaking, there was a sudden knock on the kitchen door, followed by an impatient voice shouting from outside, "Hey, George, what are you muttering about? Hurry up and cook. We're starving to death." This shout scared Andre quite a bit. Fortunately, his mental fortitude was strong enough, and he didn't make any sound. However, dragging it out was obviously not a solution. He rolled his eyes and instantly thought of a way. He quickly imitated Fatty's voice and replied, "Wait for another half an hour. Can't you see that I'm busy? When it's done, I'll put it at the door. You can come and get it later." Perhaps it was because they were separated by a door, or perhaps the pirate outside had too much to drink, but he didn't hear anything strange. He just cursed a few times and quickly left. Hearing the footsteps getting farther and farther away, Andre finally breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, finally fooled them. Now it's time to give these guys something fierce. I hope they can eat to their heart's content. Hee. There was no doubt that he wanted to poison these pirates. As no one knew that the chef had changed, it was the best opportunity. As long as the pirates were not vigilant and ate the highly poisonous aconite juice, it wouldn't take long for them to fall to the ground and die or go into shock. At that time, except for a few people with strong physical fitness, the rest of the people on the ship would be lambs waiting to be slaughtered. It had to be said that this plan was very insidious, but considering that they were dealing with a group of evil pirates, Andre didn't have too much psychological burden. Let's do it. For years of hard living allowed him to learn many skills, and cooking was one of them. Before he crossed over, he was a culinary enthusiast. He had always believed that the most important thing in life is to eat. If you have to make do with this, then you might as well die, as his life motto. Therefore, his cooking skills were very good. Unfortunately, there weren't enough seasonings in this world, so he gradually lost interest in cooking. Most of the time, he would make do with whatever he could, as long as he didn't starve. Fortunately, he hadn't forgotten his basic skills. It didn't take him too much effort to return to his old profession. It only took him a few minutes to clean the bacon and cut it into small pieces. Then he scooped a spoonful of fat and threw into the pot. He added a few cloves of garlic and stir-fried them together. Following that, he added a handful of soybeans. After stir-frying until it was about 40% done, he added in the dried mushrooms and water. In the era of wooden sailing ships, sailing was a very difficult thing. The crew basically ate bread that was moldy or had been bitten by rats. The food was limited to a few that could be preserved for a long time. Therefore, Andre couldn't find many ingredients. He could only hope that the taste of the pirates wasn't too high. Taking advantage of the stewing time, he poured out the hard bread from the bag, dipped it in water, and fried it in another pot. Finally, he added a little salt to the soup, and a sumptuous meal was ready. Of course, before he took it out, he also poured all the poison he had on him into the soup pot. According to the calculation, it was enough to put in a few hundred people. As long as they drank a mouthful, they wouldn't be able to survive. After doing all this, Andre carefully opened the door and looked around. After confirming that there was no one around, he put the soup pot and the basket of fried bread at the door. He silently waited for the guy from before to come back and get the food. Perhaps the pirates were really hungry. Not long after, footsteps could be heard outside the door, followed by an impatient voice shouting, "Aha! Today's lunch is really delicious. George, I take back what I said before about the food being bad. You're a good cook. Goodbye." After saying that, he picked up the soup pot and walked towards the deck. The sound of his footsteps quickly disappeared. At this moment, Andre secretly prayed that this guy wouldn't die on the way. He just heard him drink a big mouthful at the door. If there was no accident, he would enter a state of shock in a few minutes. It couldn't be helped. The toxicity of the aconite was so terrifying. Moreover, the dosage was so high. It would be a problem if he didn't die quickly. The anxious wait was quite unbearable. Every minute was a kind of torture. The only thing he could do now was to stare at the information on his retina. He wanted to see when the first experience of being poisoned would appear. Poison entered the target's body. Physical quality appraisal. Fail. Target poisoned. Inflicted 3 poison damage to the pirates. Inflicted 2 poison damage to the pirates. Inflicted 4 poison damage to the pirates. Inflicted 6 poison damage to the pirates. Target unconscious. Target unconscious. Target unconscious. After a large number of data popped up in his retina, Andre suddenly fell into ecstasy. There was no doubt that the pirates had eaten the poisoned food. Now, they had fallen on the deck in large numbers. Although no one had died, because of their strong physical quality, it was enough to say that. Seeing that the number of fallen pirates had exceeded 60, he pulled the pulley crossbow, inserted the arrow, and without hesitation, pushed open the door and walked into the cabin with his magic pet. Unlike the hustle and bustle just now, the whole ship suddenly became completely quiet. The guys who were sleeping in the hammocks were also gone. Only the occasional painful groan from above could be heard. Obviously, the plan was going very smoothly. The number of poisoned people was much more than expected. It seemed that more than 70% of the pirates could be eliminated without any effort. At the thought of the large amount of experience that would soon enter his account, Andre suddenly became excited. He trotted all the way through the crew's rest area and quickly came to the deck. The situation was similar to what Xian had expected. The spacious deck was densely packed with unconscious pirates. Only 5 or 6 of them, who seemed to be the leaders, still maintained a weak consciousness. They were struggling to crawl forward slowly. Chapter 74. More than a dozen young women who were trapped on the mast obviously did not eat the poisoned food. They were all scared and curled up into a ball, staring at this strange scene. perhaps because they had been tortured for too long. Even when they saw the boy, they did not shout or ask for help. They just lowered their heads and silently watched the development of the situation. Andre did not have time to care about these poor women. He directly aimed at a pirate who was not unconscious and pulled the trigger, nailing him to the deck in an instant. Hit the vital point. Fatal blow activated. 14 points of damage to the pirate leader. Target's heart destroyed. Dead. 100 experience points gained. The moment he received the experience points, his heart could not stop beating wildly. 100 experience points was twice the amount of experience points of the gnomes of the earth. This also meant that the level of these pirate leaders was not low. If he did not use poison to injure these guys in advance, it would take a lot of effort to fight them head-on. Just like the last page of Magic, Enlightenment said, for a mage, all kinds of powerful arcane spells were just tools, and outstanding wisdom was the foundation of everything. Dozens of pirates with professional level were simply invincible enemies for a low-level mage. But look at now, a small bottle of poison solved all the problems, and at the moment, the pirates did not have the strength to fight back at all. They were completely like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Taking risks is the right choice. Now it's time to harvest the fruits of victory. Andre whispered in a low voice, and sneered as he pulled out the tri-edged sword and stabbed the enemies on the ground one by one. In just a few minutes, the deck was covered in blood, and a total of 65 pirates became the souls of the dead. At the same time, he also received 3,700 experience points. Most of the ordinary pirates gave 50 experience points, and the few leaders gave 100 experience points. The undistributed experience points suddenly increased to 5,450, which satisfied the need to level up. However, he did not choose to level up in a hurry. Instead, he picked up a curved sword and went to the mast. He cut the ropes tied to the young women and said in a low voice, "Don't be afraid. I'm here to save you. Quickly put on some clothes and find a place to hide. There may be a very fierce battle here in a while. Save us. Really. Finally, we can leave this terrible place." Woo, 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 woo. A girl who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old and had small freckles on her face couldn't help but cry. She had endured too much humiliation and torture. She couldn't believe that she had survived. As soon as she cried, the other women immediately followed suit. For a moment, the entire deck was filled with sobbing sounds. Fortunately, they didn't cry out loud. Otherwise, the remaining pirates would have noticed. Seeing that the crying was getting louder and louder, Andre quickly put a finger on his lips and said, "Shh, don't cry. Now is not the time to be sad. Find something to wear and get off the boat. Remember, no matter what you see or hear, don't make any noise. Otherwise, I won't be able to take care of your safety." Hearing that they were not out of danger, the women quickly wiped their tears. They took a few pieces of clothing from the corpses of the pirates and put them on. They carefully climbed down the ladder and hid behind the surrounding rocks. They did not dare to go too far as they did not have any martial arts skills. Before disembarking from the ship, the girl who spoke earlier whispered into her savior's ear, "Sir, please be careful. There's a woman with a tail and horns on this ship. She's very powerful and seems to be able to use some supernatural powers." "What? A tail and horns? Can you describe her appearance in detail? Also, where can I find this woman?" Andre asked with shining eyes. Based on his instincts, he could instantly determine that this should be the spellcaster he was looking for. The tail and horns meant that she had a non-human bloodline. For example, she came from the Abyss, a demon that symbolized evil and chaos. Similarly, she was one of the enemies of demons, a devil that symbolized order and evil from hell. The last possibility was that she was a bloodline born from the union of a dragon and a mortal. The scientific name of the first was Teflon, the second was Tieflin, and the third was Draconian or Dragon bloodline. No matter which one it was, it meant great power. As long as the power hidden in their body was activated, they would immediately obtain some spell-like abilities. Even if they were not a spellcaster, they would be able to use them at will. Of course, there were pros and cons. While these guys enjoyed great power, they were also affected by the nature that flowed through their veins. Demon bloodlines were usually violent and irritable, while devil bloodlines were usually sinister and cunning. As for dragon descendants, it depended on whether they were the kind metal dragons or the evil chromatic dragons. In addition, they were also likely to be ostracized by human society. This was especially true for Teflon, who had a demon bloodline. They were always filled with the desire to destroy and destroy. If they were discovered, they would either be directly killed or sent to mages as slaves or experimental subjects. The girl swallowed in fear and said in a trembling voice, "I don't know that woman's name. I only know that the pirates call her the Queen of Whips because she always has a whip full of spikes on her waist. She likes to tie people to posts and beat them to death. Her skin is a little red, and she has small sharp horns on both sides of her forehead. Her teeth are also particularly sharp, and her blood-red eyes make people feel very uncomfortable. Her body also often emits a faint smell of sulfur. There is a dungeon-like room in the lowest level of the cabin. You should be able to find her there. Small horns, sharp teeth, red eyes, and the smell of sulfur. Very obvious demon characteristics. She should be a Teflon," Andre muttered to himself while stroking his chin. He then raised his head and asked, "Then did you notice what her feet looked like? Did she have toes like a normal human or forked hooves?" "It should be her toes, because she always wears normal boots. If she had hooves, she wouldn't be able to fit in," the girl replied in a very confident tone. "Thank you very much for your information. Now go and hide." Andre smiled and patted the girl's shoulder, then walked into the cabin without looking back. He already had a rough idea of his opponent's situation. She was a demon descendant of an unknown generation. Due to the deterioration of her bloodline, her demon characteristics weren't very obvious, especially her feet. If she was a first, second, or third generation descendant, she would definitely have forked hooves instead of normal human feet. Chapter 75. Due to the lack of information, there was no way to determine the profession of this half-demon for the time being. However, judging from the name of the pirates, the weapon should be a whip. This was a special weapon that required a lot of skill. It had high requirements for the user's arm and wrist strength. Anyone who used this weapon on the road had some skill. Andre had read a lot of information in the library of Ulysses, so he knew that these half-demons were quite difficult to deal with. They were often smarter and more agile than humans. At the same time, their skin had some magic resistance. When dealing with cold, fire, and lightning magic, it often played an unexpected role. Moreover, their innate spells were strange of every description. They could often force their opponents into a panic. Generally speaking, a Tiefling was quite a difficult opponent, but now there was also a pirate captain with a mithril scimitar. It was definitely not a small challenge. As a person who was naturally cautious, Andre thought that there should be about 4 to 5 pirates in the cabin. This meant that he had to face at least 6 to 7 enemies, and one of them had the ability to cast spells. It was a bit dangerous no matter how he looked at it. In order to increase the success rate, he had to raise his wizard level before he started. Although it was too late to learn a level 3 arcane spell now, the power of all arcane spells would become stronger after leveling up. His magic pet Little Eye by his side would also gain some new abilities, so he could not hesitate at this time. In fact, from the day he accepted this mission, Andre had already prepared himself to go all out. He did not expect to be able to kill everyone without any injuries. If the worst came to the worst, he would exchange injuries for lives. Anyway, as long as he could return to Linton City alive, any injuries could be healed with magic. At most, he would just have to spend some money. It had to be said that the upper class of Orire lived like a paradise. As long as you had money, there was almost no illness that couldn't be cured. Compared to the rich people on Earth who died of terminal diseases, it was 100 times better. Hiding in the corner of the cabin, Andre did not hesitate to open the system to upgrade himself. "Are you sure you want to allocate 4,000 EXP to the wizard profession?" "Yes. Your wizard level has increased to level 5. You have received 1 ability point. Your magic pet has increased to level 5. You have used one ability point and chosen spell penetration. Name: Androrace, human alignment, neutral, good attributes, strength 7, agility 15, physique 8, intelligence 19, perceptive 12, charm 11, profession. Level 5 mage experience required to upgrade, 10,000/17,000 number of memorizable arcana techniques. Level 0, for level 1. For level 2, 3+1, effective mage badge, level 3. 2 currently mastered arcana techniques. Level 0, Mage Hand, Read Magic, Illuminate, Repair, Secret Imprint, Magic Trick, Tremor, Stun level 1, Prismatic Spray, Mage Armor, Grease, Appraisal, Magic. Missile, Burning Hand level 2, Invisibility, Web, Fireblade, Panic, Melf's Acid, Arrow level 3. None HP, 1818, Healthy Experience Points, 1450, Unallocated Specialty Points, 0 Attribute Points, 0 Mastered Abilities, Beginner Potioneering, Magic Item Crafting, Scroll Copying, Pet Summoning, Beginner Blacksmithing, Beginner Wand Crafting, Magic Material Exemption, Silent Spell Casting, Magic Penetration. Your magic can penetrate resistant skin and cause additional damage. Magic Pet Information Name: Small Eyes Race, Pearl Eye, Magic Creature, Alignment, Neutral Evil Profession, Magic Pet level 5. This creature's level increases as the master's level increases. Strength 7, agility 17, physique 9, intelligence 6, perceptive 10, charm 12, HP 22/22, healthy, special ability, Cold Ray, 24 shots per day. Immune to charms, spells, natural magic resistance, flying, mastered abilities. Alertness, flexible movement, more flexible, harder to hit, able to counterattack while dodging, after a total of 4,000 experience points. Were absorbed, a powerful magic power was emitted from his body, and Small Eyes suddenly became bigger. The most important thing was that it had obtained the ability Magic Penetration, which could finally ignore some of the magic resistance produced by Taffrin's skin. Waving his fist, Andre took a deep breath, picked up the pulley crossbow, and walked straight forward. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no need for him to hide anymore. He just had to stand out openly. Anyway, the remaining enemies would inevitably gather together, so a sneak attack wouldn't have much effect. Passing through the long and narrow cabin, it took almost no effort to see the captain's room at the end. It was a rather gorgeous door with a brass rudder inlaid on it. 2 bearded pirates were guarding the door. As soon as they saw a stranger approaching, they immediately pulled out their weapons and shouted, "Stop! Who are you? Why are you here? Boy, you better be honest. Otherwise, I'll cut off your head." "Cut off my head? Sorry, I don't think you can do it." After a teasing sentence, Andre did not hesitate to order the magic pet to attack. Small Eyes fiercely shot out a frost ray, instantly hitting a pirate, covering him with a layer of frost. Taking advantage of the opponent's slow movement, he directly pulled the trigger, and a thick arrow went through the pirate's throat, killing him first. Hit the vital point. Fatal blow activated. 20 points of damage to the pirate leader. Target's throat is torn, unable to breathe. Dead. Gained 70 EXP. Seeing that his companion was easily killed, the other pirate immediately realized that the situation was not good. He turned and ran in the direction of the captain's room. But no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't be faster than the frost ray. Before he ran 3 meters, he was frozen in place. At this time, not to mention running, he couldn't even move. Andre, who stood in place, was not in a hurry. He pulled the bowstring, loaded the arrow, aimed, and shot. As an arrow pierced through the air, it directly penetrated the pirate's head, and another 70 EXP entered his account. With the help of Small Eyes' frost ray, he successfully took care of the 2 guards, but at the same time, he also alarmed the people inside. After only a few seconds, 2 men and a woman rushed out of the captain's cabin. One of the men was about 40 years old, more than 2 meters tall, wearing a gray leather armor, and looked very fierce. He looked like either the first mate or the bosun. Chapter 76. The other man was about 30 years old. He had short brown hair and a terrifying scar on his face. Coupled with the silver scimitar in his hand, there was no doubt that he was the captain that Chloe had mentioned. He was wearing a light, inlaid leather armor that pirates liked the most. His eyes were filled with tyranny, and his messy beard and hair showed that he hadn't bathed for at least a month. He was wearing a pair of black high-top boots, and the soles were obviously anti-slip to prevent him from slipping on the bumpy sea. As for the last woman, it was impossible to tell her age. She had long, fiery red hair, blood-red eyes, and a pair of similarly red horns on her forehead. Her skin was slightly red, and her clothes were unusually revealing. Only a few important parts of her body were covered with pieces of cloth. Her tail swung behind her back, emitting an alluring aura. The captain glanced at the corpse on the ground, raised his head, and asked fiercely, "Did you kill my men?" "That's right. The two of them wanted to chop off my head, so I had to make the first move and kill them all." Andre replied with a smile, while ignoring the enemy in front of him. He calmly repeated his actions, as if he did not put the enemy in his eyes. But in reality, his nerves were already tense. The magic ring on his hand was already ready to attack at any time. "Good. Very good. You're the first person who dares to talk to me like this. Don't think that you're so great just because you're a mage. I've already killed 4, and you'll be the 5th. The captain was obviously enraged. His eyes were almost spitting fire. If it wasn't for someone holding him back, he would have already rushed forward. The person who held him back was none other than a middle-aged man who was more than 2 meters tall. He carefully sized up Andre, then squinted his eyes and asked, "Mage, who are you? Why did you come to our ship to kill people? Who hired you?" This guy had a calmness that did not match his ferocious appearance. Not only was he not angered, he even used a series of questions to calm his captain's emotions. Andre couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. His initial plan was to infuriate the other party and lure one of them to initiate an attack. Then, he would eliminate one of them at lightning speed. This way, it wouldn't be a problem even if the other two came at him together. Unfortunately, the burly man seemed to have seen through his intentions, so all his plans went up in smoke. The woman with the demon bloodline gently swung her tail behind her, and a red light flashed in her eyes. She then let out a coquettish laugh. "Ha ha ha ha! Little brother, come quickly and let big sister love you. I like youths like you who are full of wisdom. Oh, just thinking about it makes me feel hot all over." After saying that, her entire body emitted a strong, attractive force, making Andre's mouth dry up. He couldn't wait to rush over and tear off the remaining few pieces of cloth, then press her under his body and ravage her, venting all the fire in his heart. Just as he was about to take action, he immediately felt that something was wrong, as if a strange force was eroding his brain. He hurriedly bit his tongue, and the pain and the smell of blood quickly woke him up. He raised the pulley crossbow and threatened loudly, "Stop your charming behavior, or I'll immediately let you taste the feeling of an arrow piercing your heart." "Oh, that's so sad. I'm really interested in you." The woman grabbed her tail and put it in her mouth, licking it seductively. She looked exactly like a thirsty woman. "Haha, interested? Sorry, I don't want to be like those feudal knights who were charmed by you." Andre wouldn't forget the information mentioned in the information, especially the knight who died with a smile on his face. There was a 90% chance that he died in the hands of this tiefling, so he secretly increased his vigilance, afraid that he would be accidentally charmed. One had to know that to become a feudal knight, one had to be at least a 6th-rank professional, a 5th-rank warrior, and then a 1st-rank feudal knight. This meant that their bodies had been modified by the magic energy everywhere in the world, and they had a certain resistance. Sometimes, they could even resist a rank 0 spell. But even so, the unlucky knight was still carelessly hit by her. This showed that this woman was definitely not simple. The powerful charm that she used just now was comparable to a rank 3 arcane spell, Berserk Charm. He had to be extra careful, or else the consequences would be unimaginable if he was stunned for a second or two in battle. Seeing that the charm had failed, the half-demon didn't get angry. Instead, She smiled and sent a flying kiss. How cute. I'm looking forward to turning you into my slave more and more. Andre narrowed his eyes, the corners of his mouth rising slightly, revealing a chilling smile. Oomph. Is that so? I'm also looking forward to turning you into my slave. I heard that you like to whip people to death. When you become my slave, I'll let you have a taste of it every day. In fact, in the Oleal continent, although most countries had already entered a feudal system, and some had even reached a parliamentary or republican system, the slave trade had not only not gone extinct, but had instead become even more prosperous. Bandits captured by the army, defeated soldiers who could not pay the ransom, bankrupt people, felons, and so on could all be sources of slaves. As a city with a prosperous maritime trade, Linton City also allowed slaves to exist. It even encouraged nobles and merchants to buy and keep slaves in large numbers. Many manors outside the city were completely farmed by slaves, and the number of slaves was 2 or 3 times more than the number of tenants and farmers. Of course, most of these slaves had a good life. Apart from the lack of personal freedom, their food and accommodation were better than ordinary civilians, and they were all very loyal to their masters. Usually, before they were sold, they would be brainwashed by slave merchants using some special methods. As long as they weren't too insulted, beaten, or scolded, they would rarely resist. Andre didn't hate slaves, but he didn't like it either. After all, even in the 21st century, there were many people who lived like slaves, enduring great pressure every day. Not to mention that this world was so backward, and slavery was in line with the development of productivity. However, Tayflin's cruelty and viciousness had successfully aroused the anger in his heart, especially the fact that he had whipped people to death. It was simply too perverted. He decided that after killing the other 2, he would turn this woman into his slave and let her have a taste of the pain and despair of those who had died. Chapter 77. You're so cute when you're angry. I'm so excited that I can't help it. When Tayflin heard that someone wanted to turn her into a slave, she didn't get angry. Instead, she became even more presumptuous. The tail behind her kept swaying, as if hinting at her master's mood at the moment. She was like a venomous cobra, giving people a very dangerous feeling. It was the first time in his life that he was teased by a woman. The corner of Andre's mouth twitched slightly, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. He immediately pulled the trigger at the middle-aged man. Because the distance was very close, he didn't need to aim at all. Because among the 3 enemies, this middle-aged man was the most steady. Usually, steady people were especially cautious. As long as he was there, the other 2 people would be difficult to provoke. Therefore, although this guy was not the one with the highest combat power, he was definitely the first target to be killed. The magic pet and the mage were telepathically connected, so the moment Little Eye pulled the trigger, it also shot out a freezing ray with cold air. It froze the middle-aged man's leg in an instant, making it impossible for him to make a normal dodge. "Be careful!" the pirate captain shouted and waved his mithril scimitar. Silver light flashed, and sparks flew everywhere. More than half of the crossbow bolt was cut off, and even the arrowhead was slightly deflected. With a plop, it pierced into the man's left shoulder, obviously weakened a lot. The middle-aged man screamed and hurriedly pulled out the arrowhead stuck in his muscle. He tore open his clothes and simply hugged the arrowhead. His warrior level was obviously very high. After he tightened his muscles, they were almost as hard as hardwood. The crossbow bolt couldn't even pierce into his body. However, Andre had been counting on this arrow to cause a lot of damage to the man from the beginning. Not to mention that the arrow had been dipped in poison. It wouldn't take long for the poison to spread throughout the man's body. At that time, even if he didn't die, he would lose his ability to fight. It could be said that he had made a big profit. After the shot succeeded, he didn't hesitate to turn around and run towards the deck. After all, this was a wooden ship. If he used powerful arcane spells in the cabin, it could easily cause a fire. Moreover, there were also white phosphorus incendiary bombs, so he had to go to a spacious place to let loose. "Chase, don't let this damned brat escape." The pirate captain was more impulsive. He shouted and chased after them. The middle-aged man endured the pain and followed closely behind. The woman waved her whip and followed behind them. From time to time, she would let out a charming smile that made people feel hot all over. However, their speed was obviously not as fast as Andre, who had been in charge of luring prey in the forest for a long time. In addition, Small Eyes suddenly turned around and shot a frost ray. Although it did not hit the target, the three of them were in a very difficult situation. They did not dare to run at full speed, and in the blink of an eye, they were left far behind. Although Andre's physique wasn't satisfactory, resulting in his poor endurance, his 15 points of agility gave him extraordinary reaction speed and explosive power. Relying on this point, he won himself a few seconds to prepare. Taking advantage of the fact that the enemy hadn't caught up, he jumped to the ground and quietly placed 2 Molotov cocktails on the ground. In a short span of 2 seconds, he created a simple fire trap. As the light in the cave was rather dim, 1 or 2 extra cocktails on the ground could not be seen at all. After doing all this, he took out the last Molotov and stood at a safe distance with a cold smile, silently waiting for the enemy to appear. Not long after, the pirate captain with a mithril scimitar was the first to rush to the deck. When he saw Andre, he did not even hesitate and directly jumped into the trap. He then laughed and shouted, "Brat, why aren't you running? Don't think that you're so great just because you're a mage. I'll chop off your head and make it into a wine cup." "You're using human skulls to make wine cups?" Andre narrowed his eyes and asked with a cold smile. As he got to know more about the pirates in front of him, he increasingly felt that their whole family was a bunch of trash. They had no trace of humanity at all. They definitely deserved to die 10,000 times. Perhaps being burned alive by white phosphorus would be the best punishment for them. Of course, among all the skull wine cups, I like the 4 treasures made from mage skulls the most. You'll be the 5th. I'll use my scimitar to open your skull alive, and then dig out your brain and eat it. How is it? Did you pee in your pants? Ha 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 ha. The pirate captain laughed crazily at the end. His eyes emitted a faint light, looking like a demon that crawled out from the abyss. He was not ashamed of his brain-eating fetish. Instead, he was proud of it. Just as the 2 of them were talking, the middle-aged man also jumped down from the deck and reminded him loudly, "Captain, he's a mage. Since he didn't run away immediately, he must have something to rely on. You'd better be careful. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if you get ambushed like last time." "Shut up. I know what to do. No matter what, I can't let this brat escape today. I'm going to eat his brain." After shouting, the captain licked his lips excitedly. The ugly scar on his face was especially ugly. In fact, the reason he could kill the mage was because of that sharp mithril scimitar. Otherwise, when a normal weapon came into contact with a mage's armor, a portion of its power would be instantly dissipated by an invisible force field, so it would be difficult to really cause fatal damage. However, a mithril weapon was different. This thing was light and sharp. Moreover, it could absorb and conduct magic energy, so it could easily tear through defenses. Unless it was a defensive spell of level 4 or above, it would not have any effect at all. Andre originally wanted to wait for the woman to jump down before activating the trap. However, it seemed that the other party had no intention of getting off the ship. Therefore, he smiled and immediately unscrewed the cap of the bottle. The blazing fire glue was ignited when it came into contact with the air, and he immediately threw it out. The glass bottle that was ignited flew in an arc and smashed into the rock above them. The mixture of white phosphorus and black gunpowder was ignited in an instant, and then sprinkled on the middle-aged man and the pirate captain. The 2 of them began to extinguish the flames on their bodies. At the same time, the corks of the other 2 Molotov cocktails on the ground were also ignited. With 2 loud bangs, they exploded into pieces, turning the area within a radius of a few meters into a purgatory. Ah! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! This fire can't be extinguished. The 2 people who were covered in white phosphorus desperately patted, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. However, they found that there was no effect at all. Moreover, The flames continued to seep into their skin. The intense pain was simply unbearable. What was more terrifying was that the glass shards pierced into their flesh along with the explosion. Chapter 78. Just as they were about to jump into the water, Andre raised his finger and pointed lightly. A thick layer of magic grease instantly appeared on the ground. The middle-aged man and the pirate captain didn't pay attention and fell to the ground with a plop. Their bodies were immediately covered with more white phosphorus powder. In order not to attract the attention of the female Teflon on the deck, he specifically used the ability to cast spells silently. When he was preparing, he used a level 2 spell slot to memorize the level 1 arcane spell Grease. In an instant, he turned the situation of the battlefield around. Then he aimed at the pirate captain and shot a highly poisonous arrow. The temperature of the white phosphorus was more than 1,000 degrees, and it could burn through the skin to the bones. The intense poisonous gas produced was extremely harmful to the eyes and respiratory system. Even if the two guys in front of him didn't burn to death, they would definitely lose their ability to fight. Glancing at the two struggling in the flames, Andre raised his head and asked the woman standing on the deck in a cold tone, "Are you going to stand there and watch your companions burn to death? Don't you want to come down and save them?" My dear little brother, I don't want to be burned to death by your evil alchemy item." The half-demon replied with lingering fear, although she still maintained a smile at this moment. Even a fool could see that the smile was quite forced, especially the fear in her eyes. It was obvious that she was scared to death. "It seems that you're the most cunning and cautious of the three. But it doesn't matter. Since you don't care about their lives, then I won't be polite." After saying that, Andre pulled the bowstring of the pulley crossbow, took out a poisonous arrow from the quiver behind him, and put it into the groove. He aimed at the half-dead pirate captain and pulled the trigger without hesitation. With a whoosh, the sharp arrow accurately pierced into the enemy's body. Target hit. Dealt 13 damage to the pirate captain, poisoned into the target's body. Physical quality appraisal. Failed. Target successfully poisoned. Dealt 1 poison damage to the pirate captain. He didn't die. Andre couldn't help but be taken aback. This was the first time he had met someone who hadn't died after being hit by a crossbow. What was even more frightening was that the other party was already on the verge of death from the phosphorus fire. If they were to fight head-on, he wouldn't be a match at all. Arcane magic was powerful, but high-ranked warriors were not to be trifled with. The pirate captain in front of him was at least rank 8. Usually, a person with such strength would be a famous knight captain or the leader of a force. Why would he come to Linton City to become a pirate? It was like a person who could have been the CEO of a listed company, but instead chose to be a thief on the streets. Obviously, there must be some secret hidden here. At the same time, it also meant that he was involved in a huge conspiracy. However, there was no turning back. At this point, there was no turning back. Hence, Andre made a prompt decision. He pulled the bowstring once again and aimed an arrow at the pirate captain. Target hit. Dealt 10 damage to the pirate captain. Target's HP has reached 0. Dead. Obtained 1,500 experience points. The large amount of experience points allowed him to confirm his judgment. He immediately shot another arrow at the middle-aged man, obtaining another 800 experience points. There was no doubt that the other party's profession level was quite high, based on the fact that the stronger the enemy killed, the higher the experience points gained. The captain's profession level should be around rank 10, and the guy who is either the first mate or the bosun should be around rank 7 or 8. If not for the white phosphorus incendiary bombs, he would have used up all his arcane spells and magic scrolls. He might even have been injured. After all, the mithril scimitar was too sharp. The flame protective robe and mage armor he was wearing wouldn't be able to defend against it. After the two high-ranked warriors who should have been very difficult to deal with were killed by the traps set up at the last minute, the battle finally changed from a 1v3 to a 1v1. Andre even had a magic pet that could provide long-range support at any time, the Eye of the Sphere. It could be said that not only did he resolve the situation of being ganged up on, but he also gained a slight advantage. Just as the book said, for mages, wisdom was always the most important. Those who only knew how to use supernatural powers to solve problems were just a group of barbarians who used magic. Once they met an enemy who was stronger than them, they would immediately show their true colors. However, mages who truly used wisdom were different. They could always find a way to turn defeat into victory in a disadvantageous situation. Only these people were true mages, and they could think of a higher and further goal. As a soul from the era of information explosion, Andre had long been influenced by countless ways of thinking. His character was close to pragmatism. Whether it was a white cat or a black cat, as long as it could catch a mouse, it was a good cat. He was not like some stubborn mages who were obsessed with using arcane spells to deal with their enemies. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to create so many weapons. In his eyes, killing didn't need to be differentiated by the means. As long as he could kill the target, it didn't matter whether it was powerful arcane spells or physical means. The most important thing was to avoid the important and dwell on the trivial, and easily defeat the enemies who were several times stronger than himself. Perhaps it was the after effect of years of hunting in the wild. He always subconsciously observed the surroundings, and then reasonably used the terrain, light, temperature, soil, water, and the surrounding flora and fauna to set up traps. Then, when the enemy jumped in, he would suddenly launch a fatal attack, never giving the enemy any chance to breathe. In the whole of Orire, such a practice was obviously not in line with the mainstream values. Only those professional thieves who were not good at fighting would use traps, because they were mainly responsible for scouting, unlocking, and finding and dismantling the traps in the ancient ruins. When a battle started, they would usually hide themselves first, and then wait for the opportunity to launch a sneak attack from behind. However, Andre never cared about other people's opinions. After the fire was extinguished, he walked over and picked up the mithril scimitar that fell on the ground. While feeling the metal material that was different from steel, he asked with a playful smile, "Don't you want to come down? Or do you want me to go up and find you? Why do we have to fight to the death? Can't we just sit down and talk about life?" The woman leaned on the side of the ship and rested her chin on her hand, blinking her eyes playfully. Although two of her companions were dead, she didn't seem to be nervous at all. She was even in the mood to joke. The fear in her eyes had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 79. Life. Andre laughed in disdain. "I'm sorry, but I don't think there's anything to talk about with a half-demon like you who enjoys torturing others. Besides, my mission is to kill all the pirates on this ship, and that includes you." "Kill all the pirates?" "Uh-huh. That's easy. I'll announce that I'm officially leaving this pirate ship. Is that okay?" The woman shrugged nonchalantly. Just as she finished her sentence, a notification popped up. A long string of information immediately appeared in her vision. "You've completed the mission. Find and kill all the pirate groups hiding in the sewers alone. Difficulty, extremely dangerous. Congratulations, you've received 8,000 experience points. You've randomly received 2 basic attribute points. Your dexterity has increased, currently at 17. Currently unallocated experience points, 11,750. Andre never thought that the mission would be completed in such a way. It was simply unbelievable. A total of more than 10,000 unallocated experience points was enough for him to reach level 6 as a sorcerer. At the same time, the remaining experience points were enough for him to squander for a week. This adventure was really worth it. Of course, the danger wasn't small either. If he suddenly thought of poisoning the kitchen, it would be quite troublesome to deal with a large group of pirates. If he didn't have the white phosphorus Molotov cocktail, then the captain and the middle-aged man would have to spend a lot of effort, and they might even be seriously injured. But it was all worth it. Not only would his personal strength increase by leaps and bounds, but he would also earn at least tens of thousands of gold coins. According to the rules of Lincoln City's navigation law, any goods stolen by pirates could be bought back by the owners first, but they would have to pay a quarter of the total value of the goods as ransom. With this four-masted ship that weighed 300 to 350 tons, he might be able to make a fortune this time. Finally, he could go to the Sorcerers Association to buy a batch of magic scrolls, and, at the same time, see if he could buy a really powerful magic item. In addition, the mithril curved sword in his hand was also priceless, but he didn't plan to sell it. After all, mithril was so rare that it might be useful in making some things in the future. The woman with long red hair seemed to see the joy in Andre's heart. She chuckled and asked, "Cute little brother, are you still going to kill me?" Andre raised his head and stared at her seductive face. He replied in a serious tone, "Even though what you said just now made the mission much easier, you still deserve to be punished. That's why I've decided to make you a slave and let you experience the pain and despair of those you whipped to death." He hadn't forgotten the look of fear in the eyes of the girl with freckles on her face. Therefore, he decided to personally train this cruel and vicious Taflin who had activated his demon bloodline. At the very least, he had to make sure that no innocent people would be harmed. Slaves? Ha 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 ha. The woman laughed and shook her finger. "I'm sorry. I used to be a slave, so I don't want to be anyone's slave anymore. Don't think that you've already won. I still have a trump card that I haven't used yet. You were once a slave? I think I now know why you like to whip people to death." After saying that, Andre's eyes showed a trace of sympathy. Obviously, this Taflin should have been cruelly abused and tortured in the past. After gaining power, she transferred the pain to others. From a psychological point of view, it was a serious psychological disease. "Bastard, what's with that look? Put away that disgusting attitude of yours. I don't need your fake sympathy. There's no good human being. They all deserve to die." Maybe he had poked the woman's most vulnerable scar. She finally tore off all her disguises. Her two blood-red eyes roared angrily, and she waved her 5-meter-long whip full of barbs, a large amount of which chips splashed in all directions. Seeing the situation, Andre immediately knew that his guess was right. So, without saying a word, he directly ordered his magical pet to attack and immediately began to recite a spell. He felt that there was no need to continue talking nonsense. Most people with demon blood were crazy and paranoid. They wouldn't listen to other people's advice at all. They were only willing to obey people or monsters stronger than them. Moreover, they didn't have a clear view of good or evil. If they were divided by factions, they were all chaotic and evil. "Oof. I hate self-righteous and kind idiots like you the most. Have a taste of my whip." After saying that, the woman leaped and dodged Small Eyes' frost ray. She jumped down from the ship and swung her whip at Abel's face. Just as the sharp barbs were about to hit Andre's face, he suddenly opened his eyes and raised his hand to cast invisibility. He then jumped back and dodged the whip's attack range. After that, his whole body completely disappeared in the air. Seeing that he had lost track of the enemy, Tavlin didn't panic like most people. Instead, he used the advantage of the weapon in his hand to whip the air without stopping. He obviously didn't want to give the enemy any time to cast a spell. She seemed to know the weakness of a mage very well. That was, they needed to chant and cast spells without moving. If they were distracted in the middle of the process, the spell would instantly fail. In fact, when a mage's level was relatively low, they were very disadvantaged in close combat. Once they were entangled with the enemy, they would lose for sure. This was because not all mages had as high as 17 points of agility and could rely on explosive power to quickly close the distance. Carefully avoiding the attack of the whip, Andre quickly took out a scroll and directly activated the spell on it. In an instant, a large, sticky, and tough spider web fell from the sky and covered the woman in an instant. In just a few seconds, she was wrapped in a white cocoon. The rank 2 arcane spell Spiderweb often had unexpected effects when dealing with agile but weak enemies. For example, this agile Tavlin, after subduing the opponent, Andre didn't easily approach. Instead, he cast 2 rank 0 arcane spell Electric Shock from a very far distance. He didn't stop until the opponent was completely electrocuted. This was because he had suffered too many similar losses when he first started hunting. Sometimes, cunning animals would pretend to be dead to deceive their opponents. At this time, if he carelessly approached, they would immediately bite back. But later, when he discovered that the system could determine the status of the target, he was no longer fooled. He would patiently wait for the information on his retina that the prey was dead or unconscious before approaching. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.